reporter. And in the past, Candidates Night has been held for many, many years, first by the Friends of the South Berwick Public Library, and after that by Smart Growth South Berwick, which is part of Sobo Central. And this is the first time the South Berwick Recorder will be hosting the event. I just wanted to make a plug for the reporter. You can sign up for a free email that will come to your box once a week with all the newest stories. And it links to the website. And you can give your email address to those folks over there at the table if you'd like to get that. Thanks for being here tonight and taking the opportunity to find out about our candidates. And I'd like to give a round of applause for the people who are taking their time to run for office and serve their communities. That's the last time you're going to get to clap tonight, because we have 10 candidates and 6 questions for each one. So we have a lot of material to get through, and we want to hear what these people have to say. So we'll ask you all to listen quietly and refrain from clapping or speaking so that we can hear what everybody is saying. If anybody interrupts or disturbs the event, they'll be asked to leave the room so that the rest of us can listen. I'd like to thank Lisa Jones, who for many, many years, maybe all the years, has been leading us through the evening for this event.
Right, I think the candidates, we're gonna have the candidates be the stars of the show. That's okay, thank you. Okay, I'm pretty loud though. I will speak into it. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Great to see everybody. Great to see such a nice full room. Thank you again for joining us here in Town Hall and on Zoom for this annual Meet the Candidates Night. It is an opportunity for candidates on the November 5th ballot to share with citizens their ideas about the issues that they consider most important to our town, our state, and our school community. And we thank them all for their willingness to serve. As Karen said, the audience here in Town Hall is asked not to interrupt the candidates with comments or applause. Remote audience members will be muted, and we ask that people at home keep their cameras off to avoid distractions. Tonight's event is being recorded and will be posted on the Sobo Central and South Berwick Recorder Facebook pages for later viewing. Candidates are asked to share their contact information and their introductions so that members of the public can contact them later if they have further questions. Candidates for each race were given the same question in advance so they could prepare their responses. They will each have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, 2 minutes to answer each question, and then 2 minutes for closing remarks. Our timekeeper, Len Bo, will ring a bell when their time is up for each question, and then they'll have 30 seconds to finish their statement. Candidates will be called to the podium to answer questions in alphabetical order by last name. Each candidate will come to the podium 3 times. They'll come up to the podium first for their introduction, and then to answer the 4 questions all in a row, and finally for closing remarks. It's a little different than we've done before, where we've had candidates sort of answer questions one at a time, and that's to sort of avoid a lot of up and down, given that we have a lot of candidates tonight. We're going to begin by hearing from candidates for the Maine House of Representatives. In District 149, we have incumbent Tiffany Roberts, Democrat of South Berwick. She's being challenged by Kelly Davis Rugard, Republican of North Berwick. In House District 150, we have incumbent Michelle Meyer, Democrat of Elliott, is opposed by Mark Zimmer, Republican of South Berwick. In Maine Senate District 35, Julie Rakic, Republican of Curie Point, is running against incumbent Mark Lawrence, Democrat of Elliott. In the South Berwick Town Council race, Bill Cole and Clay Curtis are vying for the seat formerly held by Jessica Sear. And finally, for MSD 35 Board of Directors, Erin Cable is challenging incumbent Lisa Flynn for a South Berwick seat. All right, well, we're gonna start with the House candidates. If I could have the House candidates, Michelle, Tiffany, Kelly, and Mark come up. Can you take your seats right here? Nice to see you.
If you could arrange yourself in alphabetical order, that would be great.
Not that order.
Arranging ourselves in alphabetical.
Possibly me not the alphabetical order instead, how it's.
Last, yes, you are. I think I need you first.
Okay. We're gonna, again, as I mentioned, start by having the candidates introduce themselves one at a time. I'm just gonna, again, apologies, go in order of what's listed here. So can I have Michelle come up first?
Yes.
Please tell us about yourself briefly. What skills, background, and previous experience do you or would you bring to the legislature? For the incumbent, what do you consider the most important actions of the House during your current term? And for the challenger, what issues motivated you to run
Lower to your
for the
mouth.
House this year?
Of course. And good evening. I am Representative Michelle Meyer, and for the last 6 years, I have been honored to serve the people of District 150, which is all of Elliott, where I live, and parts of South Berwick and Kittery. I've been a Maine citizen and a resident of Elliott for 30 years, having raised 3 children who received excellent public educations in our Marshwood school system and a strong foundation of Maine values upon which they have built successful careers and lives. I make my home on a farm under conservation easement, and we keep dairy goats and are licensed maple syrup producers. I'm proud of my community involvement with organizations focused on food and housing insecurity. I'm engaged with my constituency, available and responsive, and find great satisfaction in resolving issues brought to me and making the right connections for the people I serve to the programs, services, and individuals in state government that are in place, like me, to improve lives. I am a registered nurse by profession. I feel strongly that my legislative service is an extension of my nursing practice, particularly my policy work as a 3-term member of the Joint Standing Committee on Health and Human Services, where I have served as chair in my second and current terms. I'm proud of the legislation I have introduced aimed at strengthening and stabilizing Maine families, particularly those in low and middle income households, and ensuring older Mainers can age in place with the proper supports and services. I am a leading voice in Augusta on improving the well-being of Maine children, as well as protecting the right to reproductive health care, including abortion. I have earned the trust and respect of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and my contribution to improving lives across the lifespan has been recognized by a number of organizations, including the American Cancer Society, Nursing Leaders of Maine, the Maine Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I have been named Legislator of the Year by the American Academy of Pediatrics, as well as the Maine Council on Aging. I was named the 2022 USA Today Woman of the Year from Maine for my work at the state and community level. It is serving the people of District 150 that is the honor of my lifetime.
And just a note for me to be clear, that bell that you heard coming off, that is the 2-minute warning, and so I'll let you know when 30 seconds is up after.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle.
Tiffany. Okay, similarly, please tell us about yourself briefly and skills, background, previous experience that you bring to the legislature. What you consider the most important actions of the House during your current term.
I'm gonna preempt, Len, I'm like 8 seconds over, okay? Good evening, everyone, here and watching online. I'm Representative Tiffany Roberts, representing House District 149, which encompasses parts of North and South Berwick. I served as your state representative for the past 6 years. For those who may not know me, I live in South Berwick, raised my children, bought my first home here, and remain active in the community with my husband. As a marketing professional for over 15 years, I'm a small business owner with a bachelor's in business administration and currently pursuing my master's degree in public policy at USM. My journey into public service was inspired by a commitment to pay it forward. With my own life experience, both struggles and success, I felt it my duty to give back. My focus is being a strong voice for our community, with work centered on finding bipartisan, common sense solutions, prioritizing Maine's working families, small businesses, and local economies. I've carried forth initiatives and concerns from our community and sought their resolution and achieved them. As a two-term chair of the Innovation, Development, Economic Advancement, and Business Committee, I've addressed issues like economic development, student debt relief, and professional licensing reform. Serving also on the Agricultural Conservation and Forestry Committee my first term gave me a unique perspective on our farms and land's critical role in Maine's economy and the importance of supporting communities in the industries and resources that are the backbone of our state. Last session, we passed significant legislation, expanding access to We good? That's okay. That's okay. Expanding access to reproductive health care, providing property tax relief for working families and seniors, combating Maine's housing crisis, and passing the Dirigo Business Incentive Program, which earned me the first Legislative Business Champion of the Year from the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. These bills and others reflect our commitment to protecting rights, promoting economic stability, and addressing urgent needs in our state. My experience, dedication to bipartisanship, leadership, and deep understanding of our local challenges have equipped me to continue this work. As far as contact information, I believe my website is on every sign in town, or you can go through the state website to email me for constituent matters.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna figure this microphone thing. Okay, Kelly. So same question for you. Please tell us a little bit about yourself briefly, skills, background, and previous experience you bring, what you consider the most important action, or what motivated you to run for the House this year.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Davis Roulard, and I'm running for State House Representative for District 149, which covers part of North Berwick and South Berwick. I've been with my husband, Mark, for over 27 years. As a lifelong resident of Maine, I grew up in Sanford and now live in North Berwick. Some of my interests include protection of animals and wildlife. Sometimes we even get to help get them to medical care and rehabilitation. My other hobbies include camping, trail riding, and riding motorcycles. I've attended several different colleges in different states focusing on business administration and accounting. My work experience in banking, customer service, and bookkeeping, and recently in special education as an ed tech and behavioral health professional. I've been a member of the Elks Lodge for over 28 years and just elected to North Berwick Budget Committee. I've served as a secretary and/or treasurer to many different corporations and committees. My time with my family and my dog is very important to me. When choosing a logo for my campaign, I decided on the German Shepherd with an American flag across its heart. Yes, this is my favorite breed, but I chose that for more than one reason. It was picked specifically because of their intelligence, protection, and loyalty, which if I am elected, that's what I want you to think of me as. I'm protecting my community and I'm gonna be loyal to everyone there. They are also known for being service dogs for veterans and with the police. One of my platform issues is to fully respect and respond and support police, first responders, and veterans. One of the primary reasons I decided to run for the legislature is to protect our constitutional rights and freedoms, to include our First, Second, and Fifth Amendment, and restrict government compliance regarding our medical decisions. My second concern is our economy. Many of us are facing uncertainty with rising costs for so many necessities such as fuel, and energy. We cannot continue to sustain this inflation and budgetary constraints that increasing taxes are imposing upon our livelihood. I can be reached at rep@gmail.com. Thank you.
Mark? So again, just tell us a little bit about yourself briefly, the skills, background, previous experience you bring to the legislature, and the issues that motivated you to run for the House this year.
Hi, my name is Mark Zimmer. Maybe a little bit unconventional here. It takes me 30 seconds to say the alphabet. I can't tell you much about me in 2 minutes, but these people can. Ask Tim Cook what idea of mine Apple implemented to restructure their balance sheet. Ask Dr. Greg Baker, my university math professor, what question took 2 pages of differential calculus to solve that I answered in a short paragraph using geometry. He used my answer for many years in his classes as an example on how more complex math isn't always the best. Ask the Mackeys, a Black Bahamian family who paid for their only son's bone marrow transplant. Ask Global Housing and Human Settlements at the UN, who proposed and created their first microfinance securitization to help the world's working poor. Ask Haitian Ivan Alsame, who guaranteed and paid for his college education. I'm a math and finance university educated Wall Street distressed bond trader who had a wake-up call with 9/11. I moved to Maine and since have been focused on creating a meaningful and productive life here. My interest is now as a concerned citizen and wanting to keep the great state of Maine beautiful, safe, and productive. Kit, the Bernese mountain dog on my sign, represents loyalty, strength, friendship, determination, and support. I hope I can do as well as Kit. I was wondering if the questions asked today were based on a survey from the readers, as it seems out of sync with the current surveys that show the following are the most important issues to voters. According to Gallup, number 1, economy, democracy, terrorism and national security, Supreme Court, immigration. Coming in at number 9, abortion. Coming in at 19, climate change. And locally, according to Democrat Kenneth Capron, Senate District 27, he says the biggest issue facing Mainers are housing, ineffective leadership, transportation, high taxes, a lack of sustainable economic development, education, and too much government. Why are we talking about tonight's questions? Aren't they the same questions asked for the last few elections? I'm experienced in economics, and that is the nation and state's top issue. I bring extensive financial engineering skills at a time where inflation, taxes, and the cost of nearly everything is rising exponentially. Feel free to reach me at zimmerfor150@gmail.com. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So now what we're gonna do is have Michelle come up again, and I'm gonna ask you all 4 questions in a row. You'll have 2 minutes to answer. And then we'll continue that with all of the candidates. So for the first question, Michelle, in your view, what are the top 2 issues facing the state of Maine right now, and how do you think the legislature should address them? Please be specific about the issues and your recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Well, I know what I hear when speaking with my constituents, and what it comes down to is that we in state government should do all that we can to help Mainers afford to live, work, raise a family, and retire in the state we all love. There's an awful lot of rather poorly informed rhetoric from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle around property taxes, but very little put forward by them that would relieve some of that burden for everyday middle and low income Mainers and those on fixed incomes. What I have heard from Republicans is a desire to cut taxes for wealthy people. That just doesn't get to a solution for most of the Mainers that I know. Property tax increases are a problem, yes, I agree. I live here too and pay them. Since taking office, my Democratic colleagues and I have remained steadfastly committed to doing everything in our power to ease the burden of property taxes. No one should have to choose between paying their tax bill and food, medicine, or childcare. I've joined my fellow Democrats to pass measures to provide direct and indirect tax relief. This includes increasing state revenue sharing, which gives more money back to towns to help support local services that are normally funded by your property taxes. That program was slashed under the LePage administration to pay for income tax cuts for wealthy people. Democrats have finally met the state's obligation to fully fund 55% of public education costs, which means towns can rely less on our property tax revenue to support our schools. Republicans voted against those measures. If you'd like the complete list of programs improved and expanded and measures passed, reach out to me at michelle.meyer@legislature.maine.gov. There are many other aspects of everyday Mainers' budgets that require our attention in Augusta. We have made significant investments in childcare affordability, housing, and healthcare, to name just a few. In each area that state government can, we have and will continue to work to make life in Maine more affordable and give those who live, work, and retire here the opportunity to do so with stability, security, and dignity.
Thank you. Next question. Storms and flooding throughout Maine in the last year highlighted the economic and social costs of changing weather patterns. What role, if any, should the legislature have in preparing communities to deal with climate change and to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in our state? How much do you see climate change legislation as an avenue for creating economic benefits for communities and the workforce, or as a financial burden to the state and taxpayers?
Thank you for the question. Maine's natural resources are among our greatest assets and a primary driver of our economy. In order to keep our vital resources healthy for generations to come, we must invest in our outdoors and address the greatest threat to our environment and natural resources, that is climate change. Maine has taken big steps to address climate change and advance a clean energy economy, but the critical role of local communities should not be underestimated. Our 500 towns and cities, including the 3 I represent, know their needs and what's best for the residents, and the state must continue to collaborate on the local level to meet the goals laid out in the governor's climate action plan. Through grants and direct support to municipal and tribal governments using federal and state funds, the Community Resilience Partnership assists communities to reduce carbon emissions, transition to clean energy, and become more resilient to climate change effects such as extreme weather, flooding, public health impacts, and more. We have an extremely successful heat pump program with heat pumps, a rebate program with heat pumps now more common than oil heat in new construction. More info about that and other programs at efficiencymaine.com. Evidence-based climate policy and legislation does indeed create jobs and economic benefits for our communities. What is absolutely not helpful in any way are bizarre, far-fetched conspiracy theories about government control of weather for the creation of hurricanes to seize land, and advancing the far too often heard GOP narrative that climate change is a hoax. State legislative Democrats passed legislation to ramp up land conservation efforts, support climate resilience and emission reduction projects, provide weatherization funding, divest from fossil fuel companies, improve energy utilities, and reform our recycling system. Republicans did not vote for any of those measures.
There you go. Sorry. Want to make sure not to cut it off. Okay, next question. Since legalization of abortion after Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court, states across the country have taken steps from outright banning abortions to protecting access. In Maine, abortion is banned after fetal viability, generally 24 to 26 weeks of pregnancy, with exceptions to save the life or health of a woman. Do you support Maine's current regulation of abortion? What, if any, legislation would you like to see Maine pass to address the current federal position that allows each state to decide for itself?
Thank you. In my 6 years of legislative service, I have proudly joined my Democratic colleagues in supporting legislation protecting reproductive freedom and the right of Mainers to decide when and how to start a family without government interference. Healthcare decisions, including those involving reproductive health, are appropriately and best made between a healthcare provider and their patient. I am proud of my work to expand access to and the affordability of abortion care and protecting providers and patients from the criminalization of their right to exercise bodily autonomy, a right supported by a majority of Mainers, including those I represent in District 150. Abortion access and reproductive health care serves public health and the well-being of many individuals and families. It is the cornerstone of gender equity, a fundamentally important aspect of bodily freedom and core to human dignity. GOP-led states have restricted or banned abortion care, codifying government-mandated pregnancy at the state level. I have worked to successfully defeat similar anti-choice legislation in Augusta, advanced and unanimously supported by GOP legislators. I have and will continue to support bills aimed at safeguarding reproductive liberties and the lives of Maine women, including enshrining the right to the full range of reproductive health care in the Maine Constitution, thereby ensuring access to safe, legal abortion care, contraception, and IVF, regardless of what party is in control in Augusta. Reproductive freedom should not be on the line every legislative session.
Okay, thank you. Last question for you. The polarization of our nation, as well as our state, has become a stumbling block to progress and civility at both the national and state levels. How would you try to reduce this polarization in the Maine legislature and diminish its effect on the operation of our state government?
Thank you, Lisa. So this question creates a false equivalency with its statement about, quote, stumbling blocks to progress at both the federal and state level. The Maine state legislature I have proudly served has been remarkably productive and has delivered for Maine people in every area of policy. Stumbling blocks to progress for the Maine state legislature simply does not apply and suggests the author of the question is not keeping abreast of 6 years worth of transformative policymaking, some of it a bipartisan effort, most resultant of the Democratic majority and leadership in the Maine House and Senate. Yes, divided government and right-wing obstructionist leadership in DC has resulted in even bipartisan authored legislation finding no path to law. Polarization has not been a stumbling block to progress in Augusta, where we have accomplished so much on behalf of Maine people. Anyone who feels we have not made progress toward improving the lives of those in this and every other Maine community is simply not paying attention to how a well-functioning state government led by Democrats willing to work across the aisle with reasonable Republicans is delivering for the people of this great state.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we're gonna have Tiffany come up. And we'll get the same set of questions. So as your first question, what are the top 2 issues facing the state of Maine right now? And how do you think the legislature should address them? And be specific about the issues in your recommendations.
Thank you. Since I know I'm under time in my answer, I just want to preface this that I'm listening to Representative Meyer and realizing what a policy geek I am, because I'm seeing that while we look at things through different lenses because of the different committees that we have, arguably have our expertise in, but kind of end up at the same place, but from a different lens. So in my view, the top 2 issues that are facing Maine right now, the 2 that tie into multiple others, is the housing crisis and the workforce shortage. The lack of affordable housing impacts families, seniors, and young people across the state, making it difficult for them to stay in Maine, let alone build a future here. It's not just a housing issue, though. It's an economic one. Without affordable housing, it's harder to attract workers to key industries, which in turn hurts local businesses and the overall economy. The legislature needs to act swiftly and decisively to expand housing options. This can be done by providing more tax incentives to developers who prioritize affordable or workforce units, exploring public-private partnerships, and cutting the red tape that slows down housing production. We also need to focus on helping Mainers stay in their homes by expanding programs for property tax relief, especially for our seniors. The second issue is workforce shortage, which has worsened because of the pandemic, but it's also the result of our state's overall aging population. Maine needs a robust workforce to thrive, and we must invest in solutions that will attract and retain workers. Expanding access to workforce training, apprenticeship programs, and technical education will help ensure that people have the skills they need for today's jobs. Additionally, using the process for skilled workers from other states to obtain professional licenses here in Maine will help fill critical gaps in industries like healthcare and education. While we may often hear sound bites about other priorities, urgent issues, or claims of our inaction, it is essential to realize that no tangible solutions or policy proposals are offered here. Simply stating a problem does not create the solution. We have made incredible progress on both of these areas, and we must continue to, and we will address housing and workforce challenges, which are essential for Maine's future prosperity and will help achieve many other economic and policy goals.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Next question. What role, if any, should the legislature have in preparing communities to deal with climate change and to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in our state? How much do you see climate change legislation as an avenue for creating economic benefits for communities and workforce, or as a financial burden to the state and taxpayers?
Thank you. So the impacts of climate change are becoming increasingly evident in Maine, even in just the last year. From more frequent intense storms to rising sea levels that threaten our coastal communities, the legislature is critical in preparing our communities to handle these changing weather patterns. We must invest in infrastructure that can withstand this extreme weather, such as improved stormwater systems, reinforced roads, and flood prevention measures along our coasts. Proactively upgrading our infrastructure can save millions in potential damages and reduce the economic strain on our economies when disaster strikes. In addition to preparing for climate change effects, we must take meaningful steps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. One of the most effective ways to do this is by investing in renewable energy, such as solar and wind power. This will help us reduce our carbon footprint and create economic opportunities for Maine. Renewable energy projects, particularly in rural areas, can create jobs and revitalize local economies. We must ensure that these investments are accessible to all communities and that the transition to a greener economy is equitable. There is no longer time to acquiesce false flags about renewable energy or pander to climate change deniers. Inaction is not an option. Climate change is both a challenge but it's an opportunity. By acting now, we can create a more sustainable future while driving economic growth for our state.
Okay, next question. And I'll just read this again, and maybe I'll shorten a little bit, since we're gonna be reviewing these questions a lot. Since legalization of abortion after Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court, states across the country have taken steps from outright banning abortions to protecting access. In Maine, abortion is banned after fetal viability, generally 24 to 26 weeks of pregnancy, with exceptions to save the life or health of the woman. Do you support Maine's current regulation of abortion? What, if any, legislation would you like to see Maine pass to address the current federal position that allows each state to decide for itself?
Thank you. I fully support Maine's current laws, which provide some of the strongest protections for reproductive rights in the country. In this session, we strengthen these protections with a law that respects the complex and deeply personal decisions that women face, ensuring that they have the freedom to make choices about their bodies with their healthcare providers. These protections are essential, particularly in the wake of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which has led to many states to enact restrictive abortion bans. Maine has taken the opposite approach, expanding access to ensure that reproductive health care remains safe, legal, and accessible. We've also passed legislation that protects healthcare providers from out-of-state prosecution, ensuring that those who come to Maine for care and those who treat them are shielded from legal threats from states with harsher laws. This is a critical step in defending both providers and patients from the chilling effects of anti-choice legislation elsewhere. A woman's right to make decisions about reproductive health is just that, her choice to make in consultation with her doctor, not legislated by politicians. Maine has always been a leader in defending personal freedoms, and we must continue to protect and expand access to reproductive health care. In the face of ongoing national threats to reproductive rights, we must remain vigilant in safeguarding these freedoms and ensuring that anyone, whether a Maine resident or someone from out of state, can access reproductive care safely and affordably. We cannot go back on this issue.
Okay. Last question. Polarization of our nation and state has become a stumbling block to progress and stability at both the national and state levels. How would you try to reduce this polarization in the Maine legislature and diminish its effect on the operation of our state government?
Thank you. So polarization is a significant issue at the national level, but not here in Maine. It's important to recognize that our situation is different. With a Democratic trifecta controlling the House, Senate, governor's office, we don't face the same gridlock and the division that we see in Washington. Relating the federal division directly to what's happening in Maine doesn't fully capture the dynamics of our state and our government. That said, it is crucial to maintain respect, civility, and collaboration, even in this environment. I believe strongly in working across the aisle, not because we must pass legislation, but because it results in better, more durable policies. As chair of the IDEA Committee, I've always focused on finding common ground by working with colleagues from both parties. Whether the issue is economic development, healthcare, or education, there are almost always areas where we can agree and collaborate together for the greater good of all Mainers. Bipartisanship doesn't mean abandoning your principles. It means building solutions that benefit everyone. I am committed to fostering open dialogue, ensuring transparency, and focusing on real issues that matter to Maine. We become distracted from the progress when we continue to focus on the division. Gotta let that sit there. By continuing to prioritize collaboration and mutual respect, I believe we can reduce polarization and keep Maine moving forward in a way that benefits all of us.
Thank you so much. And now, Kelly. All right, same set of questions for you, starting with what you see as the top 2 issues facing Maine right now and how you think the legislature should address them.
Thank
Make sure I get this so everybody can hear. Many of our schools need to get back to teaching conventional academics and less on social emotional learning, among others. I am hearing about the sexual exploitation of younger children with books and hidden agendas. There is an appropriate place and age for students to learn about basic anatomy and health, without discussing and showing pictures that should be for adults only. Several parents are removing their children from public schools and paying more to put them in private schools and home study. Recently, our communities have been paying higher taxes. While a large percentage of our local taxes are going to school, there's been a large decline in rankings and proficiency. Many teachers spend more time on administrative duties rather than programming for academics. We need to remove any books from school libraries with sexual innuendos and promote financial transparency of the money from the Department of Education. Since the COVID pandemic, many educators are leaving their career. Pay increases should go to staff who are willing to focus on academics and less on administration and probing students' minds. I am frustrated and concerned to hear that so many of our residents, especially our senior citizens and veterans, are being forced out of their homes to allow illegal immigrants to move in. Our veterans gave up their rights to maintain our freedom and rights as a citizen of the United States. Senior citizens and many community members can't afford to stay in their homes anymore because of rising costs. I have spoken to some parents that would like to pass their family properties on to their younger generations. And even though the generations have good jobs, they still can't afford to buy homes and pay their property taxes. Why should our hard-earned life savings go to someone from a foreign country who is here illegally? If people want to come here and become vetted and get their green card to support themselves and do not bring crime and violence to our country, then they will be welcomed. This is a local issue, not just a problem at the southern border. We need to get strict on punishment and fighting homelessness for people that are from our small communities and be tough on the punishment of violent crime and drugs.
Okay, next question. What role, if any, should the legislature have in preparing communities to deal with climate change and to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in our state? How much do you see climate change legislation as an avenue for creating economic benefits for communities and the workforce, or as a financial burden to the state and taxpayers?
Maine has a 4-year climate plan called Maine Won't Wait that started in 2020, who is co-chaired by Hannah Pingree, the daughter of U.S. Representative Shelley Pingree. The Maine legislature already has an Environment and Energy Committee that has experience and specializes in these concerns. I do not agree with some of this plan, such as solar farms, offshore wind farms, and electric vehicles that are a danger to us and our wildlife. You don't have to drive far to experience the awful sights of these solar panels and windmills that have taken over our mountain views. I've personally been affected by them taking over our areas where we go trail riding. Yes, some of you are thinking about the gas emissions from the ATVs, but they've been around for many years. Since purchasing my ATV at the onset of COVID, we have traveled to new places in the Northeast, enjoying the natural landscape and wildlife that I would not have access to otherwise. During COVID, we got together with our friends and, quote, hit the trails rather than staying sheltered at home. This gave us an opportunity to enjoy life rather than being secluded and becoming depressed. If someone was sick, then they stayed home, not disrupting the rest of us. We still got to go out and enjoy it and our lives. I agree with the small solar panel systems in homes and businesses that are paid for privately but not subsidized. If you are not familiar with them, please research that the battery life and the impact on the environment. We live in Maine, not the South. How much sun are we getting to generate these panels, and what are the costs financially and environmentally? Carbon dioxide is a needed requirement for humans and plant life. Consider all the electric vehicles starting on fire. Maine's farms are a key factor in providing food and resources. Upon review of the Maine Won't Wait plan, I can see that this needs to be continued on from a bipartisan scientific perspective. Let's work together to put our taxpayer dollars into our best long-term solutions, rather than wasteful spending on batteries and fuel sources that are not sustainable or unsafe.
Okay, next question. Do you support Maine's current regulation of abortion, and what, if any, legislation would you like to see Maine pass to address the current federal position that allows each state to decide for itself?
I do not fully support Maine's current law. Quote, the Reproductive Privacy Act, signed into law by Governor Janet Mills in July of 2023. This law allows for abortion later in pregnancy to quote, preserve the life or health of the mother. I agree with late term in the cases of rape, incest, and potential death of the mother or baby. I believe it should be a personal decision based on the circumstances of the pregnant woman and her partner to determine if that is necessary. Before performing an abortion, consider options such as adoption. Possibly another family member may want to take the baby, or foster care. Some families I'm hearing are wanting to expand their families even after their natural born children. I think families need to focus on teaching safe alternatives and preventatives, especially with young adults. Anyone under the age of 18 should have a parent guardian take them for counseling or discuss the impact of this permanent decision before any medical procedures. And if you are going to get one, I strongly feel it should be done early in the first trimester. This is not a place for social workers or school officials to take these students to clinics, especially out of state. I believe in making my own decisions regarding my body and autonomy of my medical decisions. This is a private matter, not a decision that should be made by compliance and policy as a quote, one-size-fits-all solution for everyone. If elected, I would work as a bipartisan effort to make necessary changes to our current legislation.
Okay, last question. The polarization of our nation's state has become a stumbling block to progress and civility at the national and state levels. How would you try to reduce this polarization in the Maine legislature and diminish its effect on the operations of our state government?
For as long as I can remember in history, there has been a separation of parties among our nation's citizens. The polarization or separation of people's ideas, principles, and values by party is going to take a lot of bipartisan effort. This is not an easy fix. Even with our own political parties and unenrolled voters, we as a state have a lot of contentious feelings. In previous elections, I did my research by reading mailers online and talking with different people. And at that time, I was not a registered Republican. I made choices based on who I thought was the best candidate to align with my personal values, not just by party. We all have different priorities, such as the economy, education, and crime, to name a few. Many people have been concerned about election integrity since the last election and who legally got elected to office. This is a serious problem at a time in our lives, especially when those of us that follow the media are getting so many different views and answers to our concerns. I personally do not believe everything I hear on the local news. We have sat back too long and taken things at face value and putting our trust into government officials and media. It is time for us to listen to alternative news sources and take the time to research and reach out to people in our community to find some common ground. I feel there are too many changes being made about the process. For example, there is now ranked choice voting, electoral votes, popular votes. And this year in the primary, the unenrolled voters could show up at the polls and make the decision which ballot they wanted. I think we need to streamline the process, including voter ID. Many people are not happy with the way things are going, and the Democrats have been in power for a long time. If you want to see change, then consider voting for the candidate that aligns most with your values and offers a different perspective. The governor, Senate, and legislature, along with other senior elected officials, need to follow the Constitution and make decisions based on our ethical and moral values, not for financial gain.
Okay, Mark.
Hopefully my voice holds up.
Same set of questions for you. You can start with your top 2 issues facing the state of Maine right now and how you think the legislature should address them.
Later in this discussion, there are questions about very divisive issues, but those issues don't consistently poll with the top 5 of voter concerns. That's why my 2 top issues are the bread and butter issues that impact all voters and families. They are inflation and the tax burden. I believe Maine's state property tax philosophy is flawed. Our town's budget determines our property taxes. That flaw is that homeowners are economically encouraged to not take care of their properties. If your property and home are in excellent condition, you will pay more in taxes than the same home in average condition. What I want are objective values like square feet, number of bedrooms, acreage, not the personal feelings and tastes or opinions of the assessor. No wonder we get bank appraisals that are much lower than their purchase price for purposes of a mortgage. If assessor, banks, and a realtor, who are all knowledgeable professionals, can't agree on value, why are we leaving our property assessments to chance and opinion? The second major issue is the removal of the stabilization program. This was locked at the current tax amount, not a discount, not a gift, not a handout. Seniors pay a bulk of their property taxes to the schools. They support something they receive no tangible benefit from. I've heard that the state would lose money if they kept this program. I think that notion is absurd. That's like saying that our state loses money because they don't raise our excise taxes or our income taxes. The programs passed as a compromise are ineffective for a majority of the seniors in our towns. One is a fairness credit of up to $1,000 if your income is below a certain threshold. This reduction is often less than our amount of your property taxes are rising every year. The other lets you borrow from your equity, depriving you of that asset later if you need it. Again, below an income threshold with limited assets. Or this forces your heirs to resolve an issue of an upside down estate. Let's stay rational and objective on taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, what role, if any, should the legislature have in preparing communities to deal with climate change and to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in our state? How much do you see climate change legislation as an avenue for creating economic benefits for communities in the workforce or as a financial burden to state and taxpayers?
Thank you. As a conservative, I prefer that government is at the service of the people and not there to create laws that control the people unduly. Climate change is a worldwide issue. Maine and even our federal government have limited or no ability to dictate terms to those countries that are polluting for economic gain. Until there's a global solution, extreme climate change initiatives here in Maine are toothless. As it stands, Maine is carbon neutral. Here and now in Maine, we can focus on our contributions, recycling, choosing local, and helping local companies succeed against the mega conglomerates and corporations making it difficult to compete. I don't believe in making more local laws on practices that a common sense person already knows are proper. The issues start in the home. I was taught to be environmentally conscientious and responsible. I believe in parents educating our children on this. There are many energy initiatives that I feel are confused. A rush at the federal and state level with tax incentives to spur solar, wind, and other energy solutions has created many new problems. Buying solar panels from China because they're cheap does not create local economic benefits. It is also amplifying the exact problem that we're trying to reduce, inflation. Pollution, that was silly. These Band-Aids are poorly thought out and poorly executed. Pouring hundreds of tons of concrete in the ocean for the base of a wind turbine is creating other unintended issues. At the same time, the government is hassling our fishermen and lobstermen. Even repaving thousands of miles of roads using an oil-based surface at a time when we are trying to reduce our oil exploration is irrational. Solutions need to be vetted with all embedded costs, economic and social being weighed. The EV fiasco is just now another regrettable one. Maine has many amazing natural resources, whether there are our historical fishing and lobster, shipbuilding, vacation land, or waterfront areas. We have extensive forested areas that are being managed and grown sustainably. I came here for the way life should be. Let's not change it to New York City or Massachusetts. And I'll stop.
Okay, thank you. And next question, do you support Maine's current regulation of abortion? And what, if any, legislation would you like to see Maine pass to address the current federal position that allows each state to decide for itself?
I don't support our current law as it's too extreme. I have 3 daughters. I raised them to be independent and to make smart and safe choices. From that position, I don't like the government meddling. That being said, abortion isn't a tourist business, and either is gender change for that matter. Abortion is a deeply personal matter and comes with the need for a lot of moral introspection. I find myself largely in agreement with Bill Clinton when he said that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. In discussing what our state's laws should look like, we may take some guidance from what liberal democracies in Europe have done. In France, abortion is now legal upon request up to 14 weeks after conception. At later stages of pregnancy, 2 doctors can certify that abortion will be done to prevent an injury to the physical or mental health of the pregnant woman, or that the child will suffer from a severe illness recognized as incurable. In Germany, abortion is currently illegal, but women and their doctors face no penalty if the pregnancy poses a health risk to the woman or in cases of rape. An independent review is recommended that abortion be made legally available for the first 12 weeks. UK law prohibits abortion, but allows a defense of it if there is a risk to the life of a pregnant woman, risk or injury to physical and mental health of the woman, up to a term limit of 24 weeks, or if there is substantial risk that a child was born, they would suffer from such physical or mental abnormalities as to be seriously handicapped. I think that states will ultimately take their guidance from their people and come up with good common sense laws. Conservatives have been reluctant to talk about this publicly as it is a personal and religious issue, but I have no such reservation. As this is number 8 on Gallup and number 19 in Pew, I'm unclear why we aren't focusing on the top issues. Maybe next election, things will be more topical.
Okay. Last question. The polarization of our nation and state has become a stumbling block to progress and civility at the national state levels. How would you try to reduce this polarization in the Maine legislature and diminish its effect on the operation of state government?
Good question. What is polarization? Per the Oxford Dictionary, it is the division into 2 sharply contrasting groups or sets of opinions or beliefs. Polarization is being incubated in the media. It upsets me that everything about getting elected revolves around the media. Signs, ads, flyers, cards, texts, Facebook pages, bumper stickers, on and on and on. It's now about who raises the most money wins, not about what you think or how you can help. I almost didn't run as I was offended by this insanity. What helps? Talking to people, knocking on doors, having neighbor-to-neighbor conversations. I've learned a lot, not just what others think, but what I really believe in. I don't just talk to people that agree with me, but also those we disagree with. That is how we are going to mend this country. To answer the question about what I would do in the legislature, I would be my own person. I would use my experience and my moral code. I would be open to intelligent solutions that make our lives better and reduce the role of government in our lives. I believe the pendulum has swung too far left and will naturally move towards the middle again. I'm ready to be in the middle to facilitate positive, and nonpartisan change. The level of animosity is unparalleled in my lifetime. Leaders lead by example, and I think that is what is called for. I was approached by an outside marketing company to run a series of negative ads about my opponent. Their marketing research told them that a negative campaign is much more effective and able to deter voting for your opponent. I've seen negative pamphlets from the left about those running in my party. As a leader, I will either win or lose by my own merits, not the shortcomings of my opponent. Someone needs to stop the merry-go-round. I promise to be that person.
Okay, thanks very much. So that is the question we have for these candidates, and what we're gonna have them do is come up and just give closing remarks. And we'll start with you.
Thank you, Lisa. And once again, thank you all for being here this evening. My personal priority is, as it has been for the last 6 years of my public service, and that is to represent the people of District 150, all of them, not simply those who cast their vote for me, but everyone, with honesty, integrity, and compassion. Our Seacoast communities are well represented in the State House with the incumbent legislators here tonight. We serve in leadership positions as committee chairs. In my role as the House Chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, certainly the busiest committee, and arguably the committee whose work has the most direct impact on the health and well-being of Mainers, I work closely with my Republican committee members to craft, amend, compromise, not a dirty word, and move good policy towards unanimity frequently. Because that is what my constituency expects of me. But that requires experience. It requires relationship building and a willingness to listen, to understand other viewpoints. I would be honored to earn your vote for my reelection to a 4th term in the Maine House of Representatives. And thank you for the opportunity to participate here tonight.
Thank you. Tiffany?
Thank you. Thank you all again for being here tonight and online too. Serving as your representative is one of the most rewarding aspects of my professional life, and I'm deeply committed to continuing to work for the advancement of our community. While technically the legislature is a part-time job with part-time pay, those of you that know me know that for me it's 24/7. There are folks in this room of any and every party who know that if you reach out, I will respond, even if we disagree. This job is serving everyone all year. This is my home as well. The challenges we face, whether it's the housing crisis, workforce shortages, the impacts of climate change, they require bold, thoughtful leadership and a commitment to finding practical solutions. I believe in Maine. I believe in our community, and I believe in its people. And I know that by working together, we can create a future where opportunity, fairness, and innovation thrive. With your support, I look forward to continuing this important work and making sure that our state and our community remain a place where we all have the chance to succeed. Thank you.
To conclude, we need to audit state agencies and promote financial transparency. I know many people have been concerned about the funds used for education. Another misuse of our funds is being used to encourage and support illegal immigrants to Maine, where they receive free housing, vehicles, and healthcare, while our veterans, elderly, and homeless population are suffering. It's time to eliminate wasteful spending. Maine's climate change plan, mentions job growth in that industry. Let's focus on creating and retaining jobs in manufacturing, technology, and helping small businesses as well as promoting our economy. So a very diverse population of people in our state can return to work. Many people cannot work just one job, and some people with college degrees are not even earning wages to keep up with inflation. Citizens are serious about their Second Amendment rights to protect their families and homes. Crime rates are high for violence and drugs. People should feel safe in their homes, not worry about intruders and drugs on the streets and in the schools. Representative Roberts worked on legislation after the Lewiston shooting to make more stringent gun laws for everyone, not just with criminal or mental health issues. Both parties need to work as grassroots effort to make life in Maine more affordable and make services more accessible. I want to see our nation be patriotic and take pride in the American flag, as well as keep our current state flag. As a candidate, I have tried during my campaign to use most of the money received for basic supplies and marketing materials, such as palm cards and signs, to introduce myself, not for negative attack ads. I tried to decrease expenses and the taxpayers' burden. I hope the remaining money in my account after the election will be returned to the state to be used for resources and services for our citizens. I would appreciate your support on November 5th.
Here we go. Thank you. I moved to Maine following my 9/11 wake-up call. Maine offered a beautiful, peaceful, private, and less complicated life. Now I see that changing. Blame it on whatever you want, but we all see it and feel it. I don't want Maine to be where I came from, please. I was motivated to run because of inadequate answers to my question about why the stabilization program was passed and repealed. With my extensive financial experience, I felt I could help. If you displace seniors, families with children will fill the void, which on the surface sounds great. Those children will attend the schools will need to grow, still sounds pretty good. The budget will grow and the taxes will ramp even higher, maybe not sounding so great now. Put the cost where the benefit is, stop shaming people for questioning where the cost and the value are. It's for the kids really should be, is it good for everyone? The schools are declining in their ability to educate, and that's not because of the lack of taxes being paid or teachers not doing their jobs. It's due to the flawed educational philosophy called social emotional learning that is lowering educational standards, treating all kids as clinically depressed, and adding administrative overhead. Offer choice to families that don't want these agendas in school. Higher taxes hurt those on fixed income. In the end, if seniors leave, the tax burden will shift since economic development is not pursued holistically to strengthen the tax base. Why aren't we talking about these issues? The projected 2025 budget deficit for Maine is $949+ million. Fact check it. We need to get our state in order, stop writing checks we can't cash. Thanks to the reporter for putting this on. Although I feel some of the questions were not the ones the voters are asking, but we conservatives are here in good faith to start this process of coming together. I appreciate everyone here for taking the time to talk together about the ideas in the future. This is where it starts. Rational dialogue is needed neighbor to neighbor. We are a diverse group of beliefs, race, and gender. I thank the residents for thinking and wanting to know where we are going. If you want change, vote that way. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much to all of our House candidates. Maybe we can give everybody a round of applause. And we'll have our Senate candidate.
One second, somehow the video got shut off. Just wanna.
And just as a reminder, this is Julie Ragic, Republican of Kittery Point, running against incumbent Mark Lawrence, Democrat of Elliott. As soon as we get the technical issues resolved, we'll go through questions.
Right. 1 second. Sorry about that.
So in the low, I'll just say, if any of you are not already getting the free, Tuesday morning report on what's been posted on the South Road Reporter, please get your email contact to the reporter staff at the table, and we'd be happy to send you that report so you can see that we have a fine group of reporters. And they're doing a good job, and you might want to, if you're not already reading the local news, please join.
There's a little problem with the video. I think we got it back.
It went out when I was up there. I may have touched something down here.
I think it's fine. We
Okay.
got it back
All right.
now. Thank you. All right.
Great, thank
Well-
you. Okay, we'll start with Mark. And do you want to come up to the podium
Sure.
and introduce yourself? Again, this is similar set of questions that the House candidates received, but we're going to start with an introduction. So if you would just please tell us about yourself briefly, what skills, background, and previous experience you bring to the legislature, what you consider the most important actions of the Senate during your current term.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you all for coming. It's a great turnout, and I want to thank the reporter for putting this on and also for filling a gap in local news that has been greatly disappearing in our newspapers throughout this country. So I appreciate the report on local news. I grew up in Kittery. I've been involved in civil affairs, I think, since I can first remember when I was a kid. In fact, I was watching the cute little puppy over here. And when I was 12 years old, the town of Kittery, I got involved in municipal politics because the town proposed a leash law. And I didn't think that was a great idea. And I had a wonderful German Shepherd collie mix. And so I convinced a friend of mine to load Duchess into the wagon. And we dragged Duchess down to the Grange Hall in Kittery where they voted. And we had signs on the red wagon and on Duchess that said, "Don't tie up man's best friend, let me run free," all those cute little things. You know, the Portsmouth Herald at that time came over and took pictures. And I learned two great political lessons there. First of all, you can't be within 250 feet of a polling place because the clerk came out and shooed us away. And people aren't always going to agree with you because the leash law passed about 7-1 in the town of Kittery. But I never got discouraged and never lost an interest in being involved in politics and civil service and public affairs. I went away to college. I went to a college here in Maine, a very good college, Bowdoin College, where a lot of my classmates, probably about 92% of them, were from out of state. Came here for a good education, went away, worked in the bond market, on Wall Street, went away to corporate jobs. And I never wanted to. I love the seacoast. I love this area. And I came back here and worked in this area and began getting involved in state government very soon. I was only the second Democrat elected since the Civil War from the town of Kittery. I served in the legislature back in the 90s, becoming president of the state senate, left, became the district attorney, the highest law enforcement officer in York County. and enjoyed that greatly, ran for the US Senate, ran for Congress, and was invited to come back and serve in the legislature again. And now I'm on my last term in the Senate, last of 2 years term. Sounds a little bit like a prison sentence. I've got 2 years left if I get reelected. But I hope to have a chance to discuss the issues with you tonight, and I look forward to hearing your views.
Thank you, Mark and Julie.
Shorter.
Same question. What skills, background, and previous
Cliff.
experience do you bring to the legislature, or would you bring to the legislature? And what issues motivated you to run for the Senate this year?
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, both in person and online. I'm Julie Rackich, and I have the honor of running as your constitutional conservative for State Senate District 35. I'd like to thank the South Berwick Reporter. Thank you. I'd like to thank Zelda, and I'd like to thank Lisa for moderating, for organizing the forum, and the gratitude to all those listening and to all of you here coming in tonight. That's awesome. It's dinner time. I carry the skills, background, and experience needed to be an efficient and productive senator in Augusta in the 132nd legislature. My job is to be the mouthpiece and physical body representing every single one of the 35,000 constituents in District 35. It is to present and vote their will, your will, for governance. To do this best, you need a servant's heart. You need to be humble, honest, and an effective communicator. You must listen to what the majority of the people want or don't want from their government, both present and future. Then you can delicately and accurately problem solve law without overstepping or underperforming. I believe special interest groups and lobbyists have brought corruption to our state, to our towns, and our federal governments. On both sides of the aisle, too many lawmakers have only served in the best interests of extreme ideologies and agendas and personal benefit. It's about money and power for them. I cannot be bought, and I will never sell out to these kinds of schemes or groups. My Christian faith has given me the foundation to live out the golden rule, to treat others as I would like to be treated, to love my neighbor more than myself. I put my words into action. I am extremely loyal, not to a political party or agenda or personal gain, but to God and to country. The most important role in my 42 years is being a wife and a mother. I share 2 school-age children, Anastasia and Alexander, with my wonderful partner in life, Stoyan. We will also have 13 fur and feathered friends at home. My first profession has been in the beauty industry for well over the last 20 years. I sign the front and back of a paycheck. I can balance a budget, spending only what is necessary for investment and growth. I understand how hard it is to find and train staff, especially in the trade industries. Working through state regulations and licensing, marketing and advertising, the list goes on. My second profession is as a realtor, both in Maine and New Hampshire. This experience has given me the understanding of planning, zoning, development, environmental issues, residential and commercial growth, etc. My diverse life experience, including keeping a home and being self-employed in 2 different industries, has provided the skills I need to succeed in the Capitol. As you can see, I am a top-notch multitasker. I am running for office to be a servant of the people of Maine and to follow and preserve both the Maine and U.S. Constitution. Thank you.
Okay, Mark. So as with our last group, I'm going to go through and ask you a series of questions, actually the same questions that were posed to the House candidates. And to start, in your view, what are the top 2 issues facing the state of Maine right now? And how do you think the legislature should address them?
Well, I think it's difficult to choose any issues and say they're the top 2, but 2 issues I feel Maine as a state faces, and these are not really partisan issues, but it's economic development and education. On these 2 issues, Maine has a wonderful public school system. Maine's public school system is admired by over 75% of the people in the state, which is a very high number of any of the states in the nation. And I'm a big supporter of public education. I believe in keeping public education open and free, and it shouldn't be a place for culture wars. I think our education system has improved greatly in decades. When my daughters went through Marshwood, I was impressed by how much more higher in math they were than I went when I went through TRAPE, and how much higher they were in reading, writing, and literature when I went through trade. We have a tremendous public education system, and I'll support it with every fiber of my body. Economic development is a very difficult challenge in Maine. Maine is a state of very modest means. It has always been a state of modest means. And what has been going on since I've been involved in the state is probably 2/3 of the state geographically and half of the state in population has been experiencing a recession or a depression going on for 50 to 60 years. You look at counties like Piscataquis, Aroostook, different counties like that, they are truly in a recession or depression. And it's been my belief the only way we're going to be able to address that as a state is through targeted regional economic development. I had a friend who ran for governor, John Baldacci, and he was asking me if I'd consider being the commissioner of economic and community development. And when I chatted with him about this approach. I think what will work in Norway is not the same thing what will work in Washington County. It's not the same thing as what will work in Aroostook County. The state of Maine needs to take a very targeted approach to economic development and design it for those parts of the state that have been in recession and depression for decades.
You can stand.
Oh, sorry, forgot.
Next question.
Next question, what role, if any, should the legislature have in preparing communities to deal with climate change and to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in our state? And how much do you see climate change legislation as an avenue for creating economic benefits for communities and the workforce, or as a financial burden to the state and taxpayers?
So climate change is one of the biggest challenges we face. It's an existential challenge in this state, in this country. And it is very difficult to find unity on how to do it. When we had the Paris Accords, when the countries got together, no country agreed upon how to reduce, how to address climate change. They simply suggested a goal. And it really came down to each country or each state to determine how to reach that goal. When I started getting back in the legislature 10 years ago, we were flip-flopping. We'd have somebody as president who wanted to go this direction on climate change, another one who wanted to go another direction on climate change, and nothing was getting done. So I was very happy when Janet Mills joined 20 other governors in the country and said, let's do climate change within our states and move this country in the direction it's supposed to go. And we've done that. I chair the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee, and I describe it this way. If you look at it as a chart, 80% of the energy in the state of Maine comes not from electricity, but from carbon-based sources. And out of the amount when we started that came from electricity, only 4% of that came from non-carbon-based sources. That meant out of all the energy consumed in the state of Maine, only 4% was coming from recyclable. So what we decided to do was increase the percentage of electricity that had to come from renewable resources. We set targets. We began creating different ways in Maine to develop electricity. But the other part of it was to push that graph out and to increase the amount of energy in Maine that was consumed through electricity. If we do that, I believe by the year 2030, we're going to be well on our way to reaching a goal of being free from carbon-based fuels. And it's not only good for the environment, it's economically sound. Carbon-based fuels will only get more expensive in the future, and energy is only going to get more expensive in the future. You don't pay anybody for the sun, you don't pay anybody for the wind, and we can stabilize energy prices for the people of Maine by building a renewable electricity-based economy.
Okay, we're extending all questions. Okay, next question. And I'm just going to read through it again and then just give you the full of it. Since legalization of abortion after Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court, states across the country have taken steps from outright banning abortions to protecting access. In Maine, abortion is banned after fetal viability, generally 24 to 26 weeks of pregnancy, with exceptions to save the life or health of the woman. Do you support Maine's current regulation of abortion? And what, if any, legislation would you like to see Maine pass to address the current federal position that allows each state to decide for itself?
So I've been pro-choice all my life serving in the legislature, and strongly believe in Roe versus Wade, and strongly believe that Roe versus Wade was the correct law of the land. This US Supreme Court overturned it. It wasn't strict construction of the Constitution. It was going in a political direction, which this country simply does not believe in and does not support. And they've thrust it back on the states, and that was the argument. But I have no doubt that thrusting it back on the state was a way to increase restrictions on abortion around the country. I support what we've done in the Maine legislature. I support protecting a woman's right to choose in the state of Maine, and I will do everything I can to support that right to choose.
Okay. And last question. Polarization of our nation as well as our state has become a stumbling block to progress and civility at both the national and state levels. How would you try to reduce this polarization in the Maine legislature and diminish its effect on the operation of our state government?
So I was interested in the part of the question originally that said the 11th hour of the budget being passed. I've been involved in 30 different budgets in the state of Maine, passing 30 different budgets, closed many of them myself. None have been resolved before the 11th hour. None of them. And the reason why is the budget is your biggest policy vote when you're in the legislature. And people save the most difficult solutions to the very end. And it really takes some, political headbanging to get a budget passed. It really does. It takes a lot of compromise, a lot of discussion late at night to get it done. And we go through that in every single legislative session I've been in. One of the first ones I was involved in involved the shutdown of state government for 21 days in which state workers were locked out over a budget. So I've seen a lot go on. I will say that since 1994, I've seen a gradual polarization of politics in this country. And that's very unfortunate because I first got elected when I ran by walking door to door. I walked to every single house in my district. Probably in my lifetime, I've been close to 50 or 60,000 houses. And I believe very strongly that leadership starts in listening, that I don't have all the answers, that Republicans or Democrats don't have all the answers, that you have to listen to each other and you have to figure out where is the common ground and how to get to that common ground. And that only begins when you start listening. So the way, and this is a message we take directly from the public, when the public begins to say, we no longer want this polarization out of our politicians. We no longer want people saying, well, they like this, so we'll oppose it. You're going to see elected officials begin to respond to that and begin to seek the compromises that have made this country great. This country was built on compromise. This country was built because the swing voters in this country don't believe that Democrats or Republicans have the right answer. They believe when they pick from each side what they think is the best answer, that's when we will keep moving our country forward. Is that the last one?
That's the last one.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Julie. All right, same set of questions for you, starting with what you think are the top two issues facing Maine right now and how the legislature should address.
Okay, top two issues by far are the high cost of living and inflation. Here's a highlight of our current economic situation. We have the third highest food costs in the nation in Maine. We have the third highest energy costs in the nation, and we have the third to fourth highest overall tax burden in the nation. We've surpassed Massachusetts. The middle class in Maine is being dismantled, and we will soon have two classes, the elite and those in poverty. In the legislature, I would support movement to repeal and deregulate the overreach of government onto Maine businesses and institutions. For example, childcare centers have an encyclopedia book-sized regulation that could be safely simplified. These unnecessary restrictions and mandates prohibit new daycares from opening and old ones from expanding. This change would lower the cost of childcare in Maine. I would support a program to phase out the Maine income tax to compete with our neighbors in New Hampshire. Keeping a more skilled and diverse workforce. As a realtor, I've had multiple transactions of millennials and families from Maine moving to New Hampshire to save money on taxes, especially income. These highly educated folks working in tech and corporate business, I would love them to stay in Maine. Maybe you've noticed your tax bills going up. I would support the reinstatement of freezing property taxes for senior citizens and restore the cap on municipal rate increases. These were the law, and the Democrats in the last legislature repealed them in the dark of the night. Why? In regards to energy, Senator Lawrence is the chair of the Energy Committee. He will hopefully know more about this than I do. But my recent CMP bills show that the current policies are hurting Mainers. I would support axing the solar tax that is driving up our electrical bills. Since 2019, we have grown our solar grid and met our goals. It's time to ease up on the ratepayers. I believe in energy choice, allowing a variety of energy suppliers that will encourage competition, not monopolies, to provide more output and lower rates for homes and businesses. Last session, there was bipartisan support on the Energy Committee that included the democratically appointed public advocate to reform net energy billing, which is costing us $220 million a year. Why did Senator Lawrence go against this? In effect, lowering our energy rates and payroll taxes will in return lower food and commodity costs, as a lot of the price is passed on to the consumer. It costs a lot of money for supermarkets to refrigerate food and keep the lights on. I digress.
Okay, thank you. Next question. What role, if any, should the legislature have in preparing communities to deal with climate change and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our state? How much do you see climate change legislation as an avenue for creating economic benefits for communities and the workforce, or a financial burden to state and taxpayers?
Thank you. Also, the beginning of this question did say storms and flooding throughout Maine in the last year I've highlighted. So that's why we're all kind of talking about storms a little bit. The nor'easter last winter was truly devastating. I live on Chauncey Creek, and it was scary to see Pepperell Cove underwater and the lobster pier across the street. 100-foot pine tree fell on my house, and it was by miracle it didn't do damage, but some were not so lucky. I think it's wise to expect the unexpected, to be prepared for anything. In 2024, with current technology and systems, we can do a better job to reduce damage and loss of life. I believe encouraging citizens for emergency preparedness with information and resources. I recently met with a neighbor that's been going up to the York County Emergency Group to help them make plans to better prepare for disasters or even terror attacks. It's comforting to know that we have a group of people working on solutions for solid infrastructure and communication in the times of disaster, but I do not believe that we are where we need to be during this current time. I would support funding and materials for each county in Maine to have an emergency response group fully ready to act, to coordinate with both state and federal groups. I believe the towns in our district do a great job of providing education on best environmental practices, and we have amazing conservation groups here as well. I'm a part of the Creek Smart Pledge to protect our waterways, and I have recently joined the Great Works Land Trust. We can always improve, but in these areas, I think we are doing a great job. In fact, Maine is a carbon neutral state, which means we offset all of our greenhouse emissions that we produce. We're carbon neutral. The problem is blowing in from countries like India and China. These solutions would be better for US Congress to face. I recently went on a Maine agricultural farm tour with a legislator in August. I learned a lot at the 5 different farms we visited. Unfortunately, one was heartbreaking as it was contaminated with PFAS, the forever chemical. I support continuing to fund research and work with the University of Maine in soil testing and best agricultural practices. After having babies, I began researching food, water, and air quality. Many US products are contaminated with chemicals that cause cancer and disrupt the endocrine system, along with many other health issues. I support legislation to ban these bad agents from our food, water, air, and consumer goods. We deserve a better level of transparency and informed consent. Yes, I can see climate legislation as an avenue for creating economic benefit for communities in the workforce, as long as it is in the confines of our Constitution and is not detrimentally impacting citizens today And real quick, I can also agree that it could cause a financial burden.
Thank you. Next question. Do you support Maine's current regulation of abortion? And what, if any, legislation would you like to see Maine pass to address the current federal position that allows each state to decide for itself?
At NYU in 1992, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself criticized the 1973 SCOTUS ruling of Roe v. Wade. She claimed the court ruled too sweeping. She wrote, quote, Roe v. Wade invited no dialogue with legislatures. Instead, it seemed to entirely remove the ball from legislators' court. It's interesting that Ginsburg's argument is supported by the experience of Europe, where abortion became legal through legislation and referenda rather than court action. As a result, it has not been the political football it has been in the United States. Along with Justice Ginsburg, I agree that the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, I agree with the decision. This is due to the fact that the Supreme Court should not have ruled on legalizing abortion nationally in the first place. We have different branches of government that include checks and balances for this reason. Too many branches have overstepped their lanes and meddled where they should have not. The majority of Americans and Mainers accept the guidelines that were used in Roe, and the state of Maine carried the same statutes even before it was overturned federally. Governor Mills and the Democratic legislature promised that they would maintain and keep Roe, but they lied. Instead, they continued to implement shocking laws, including in 2023 LD 1619 and in 2024 LD 227, making Maine one of the most extreme states in the nation. Augusta did not listen to the desires of Maine people and have overstepped their boundaries, including taking away parental rights and jeopardizing, not helping, women's health. The language in this question is misleading. LD 1619 states with provider approval. As long as it is provider approved, the abortion can be performed for any reason. A more moderate approach could have been to use language like for medical purposes, but this is not the case. A woman could abort late term for birth defects, mental health, even financial reasons. There is no waiting period. Telehealth appointments can be used to mail abortion pills. We have public funding and private insurance is mandated to provide coverage. Sadly, minors can receive abortions without parental consent, as noted on the Planned Parenthood website and according to LD 227. The incumbents on this stage, but now in the room because we're not using the stage, all voted in support of these measures. There's never any discussion on trying to reduce the number of unplanned pregnancies, complications, crimes, and financial or educational downfalls in the first place. In conclusion, I do not support Maine's current abortion legislation. It is extreme and barbaric. I do support turning the decision to the voters of Maine and will fully stand behind the majority's choice. Thank you.
Okay, last question. The polarization of our nation as well as our state has become a stumbling block to progress and civility at the national state levels. How would you reduce this polarization in the Maine legislature and diminish its effect on the operation of our state government?
I would need a week to get into the polarization of the nation, but I'm happy to talk about the Maine legislature. There are far more bills passed peacefully and bipartisanly than the few that lead in controversy. Unfortunately, the media will never cover the compromise and friendship between the statesmen because they think the public yearn for drama. I agree with Mark, what he said. Unfortunately, I did learn some of the distasteful stories from lawmakers in Augusta. At least the last couple sessions have been extremely divisive in some circumstances. Legislators have been using manipulation and games to run the House and Senate floors. The Democratic majority has carried over votes, used procedural moves filled with trickery. They've used unordinary customs to pass their agendas. They have kept the lawmakers in the chambers at unreasonable hours of the night in waiting and hidden in bathrooms during votes. Our beautiful state house should not be used as a bread and circus theater. For the last 4 years, this Democratic majority has pushed through a majority budget with no Republican vote or input whatsoever. This allows them to go on massive spending sprees. They have dug us into a nearly $1 billion with a B hole. There are no checks and balances. Now that will be the burden of the next legislator to try to work with the windfall. I'm sure the Republicans have played their fair share in games in the past and have had some less than noble practices. Part of my reason for running is to help the government return to the way our forefathers intended, a democratic republic. In principle, I always work to respect any person I have the honor of encountering. We are all made in God's image. For over 20 years of clients in my hair salon, I have had tens of thousands of diverse conversations with all kinds of people that have lived through all sorts of circumstances. I learned to respect all manner of thoughts and opinions. I understand there is always more to the story. Life is not black and white. It is actually quite complex and ever-changing. I understand how to negotiate and compromise, how to meet someone in the middle to progress and move forward, not to manipulate just to get my way. I believe the only way to the path of peace, prosperity, and a bright future for our children is with unity and brotherhood. It is now time for us to come together, to bring each one of our specialized gifts to the table. These are some of the attributes that I would bring to the Senate once elected in Augusta to represent you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that was our questions for our candidates, and they're gonna give them each 2 minutes to make some closing remarks. Mark, we'll start with you.
Thank you. I'll start off with one closing remark. I gave it all the time when I recruit candidates and talk about the legislature. I always tell people I learned everything I learned about being successful and being being influential in state government. I learned at the age of 5 on Sesame Street. That was be kind to your neighbor and know how to count. And that goes a long way in Augusta. Being friendly with people across the aisle from different geographies, from different backgrounds, but also knowing what are the votes you need to win and what are the numbers you need to win. We face a real challenge here in Southern York County, and I've seen it, and it wasn't discussed tonight, but I've seen it ever since I first started to run back in the 1980s. In Augusta, they seem to think Maine stops somewhere around Portland or Biddeford. And they don't understand the unique issues we face here in York County. And as voters, I think we need to elect people who have experience, knowledge, and the ability to get influence for this part of the state in Augusta and to bring our concerns to Augusta. I'll never forget in the 90s when I was Senate president and Angus King was governor, he was proposing cutting school funding, school building funding. And lo and behold, the 2 districts that were being cut were Marshwood and Noble, 2 districts in my 2 school systems in my district. And I went to the governor, I said, Governor, that's a non-starter. We're not gonna have a budget if that's in it. And he got the message pretty clear, pretty early on. The Speaker of the House also had a school that was cut out of the budget, that we needed to fund the construction of new high schools. In this last legislative session, Janet Mills, governor of my own party, sought to eliminate funding for York Hospital. And I went to her and said, York Hospital will not survive without this funding. And she would not bend, the Department of Human Services would not bend. So I began going around the legislature and counting votes and building up support. And in the end, one of the leaders of the Democrats in the Senate went down at the 11th hour at 3 o'clock in the morning to the governor to try to close the budget. And she said, what about York Hospital? And the legislator looked at her and said, Mark Lawrence has outfoxed you. It's got to be in there. It's not going to pass. And we did. We got the votes. We got the $8 million York Hospital needs, and York Hospital has a secure future about that. That's what we need, is legislators who will stick up for the unique interests of Southern York County.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Julie?
Sure, okay. So thank you so much for, again, having me tonight. I appreciate it. I think we have all laid our hearts out on the table, and we are here for any further questions, concerns, issues, ideas. I can't do my job unless I hear from all of you. You can reach me at julierakich.com is my website, jules4senate@gmail.com. Cell phone, I'm always available. I always have my phone on me as I'm a small business owner and a realtor, but I appreciate it so much tonight. I am running for my children. I'm running for your grandchildren. It's time for a change. Senator Lawrence has done a wonderful job. He's probably been in Augusta for over 30 years.
Close.
And I'm 42. So you know what? He's done an awesome job. I think that we could agree on more than we disagree with. And by we, I mean all of you. I've had some wonderful discussions with Democrats. And at the end, they're like, whoa, like, you're not a Republican. There's no way. You've said some stuff that I agree with. And that's because we haven't had enough dialogue. We've had too much of the media influence. We've had too much of closed ears. I know we've all had situations in our own families. So I'm an independent thinker. I hope you're an independent voter. I'm running for change. I want to see more candidates running and a diverse palette of candidates. I don't want to see the same faces running over and over again as career politicians. It's not how our forefathers set up this country. The farmers, the nurses, the doctors, and now we have service workers and the fishermen. And you're supposed to go up there, do your term, and then go back to your job. You're supposed to stay connected in reality, not make a career out of it. I agree that our current governmental situation includes experience. You need to pull games and strings to get things done. I think we need to change this process. I think the votes need to be given because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to keep the hospital open for our community. And I would suggest offering them a tax exemption. So I think the current deal gave them 5 years to continue, and they have to figure out how to come up with the extra tax themselves. So let's start with simple solutions like tax exemption for York Hospital. Anyway, I appreciate your time and I'm honored. I hope I have your vote. I'd love your vote and I would work so hard for it. And if you've ever thought about running for office, please do it. And if you want to help in any way, any of the candidates, please do it. There's no volunteer or no job that is too small or unimportant. We all have to do this together. And it takes a lot of burden off the people in government who are doing a lot of work. Thank you.
Okay, that is our Senate candidates. Can we give them a round of applause? Okay, now we are going to have our town council candidates. Can I have them come up to the podium? And just as a reminder, this is Bill Cole and Clay Curtis who are vying for an empty seat. Okay, and we are going, as with the other candidates, we're going to start with an introduction and have you just come up and introduce yourself. We'll start with Bill. Would you please tell us about yourself briefly and what skills, background, previous experience, and community activities you would bring to town council? What motivated you to run for office this year?
Thank you. If you don't know me, my name is Bill Cole. I ran for town council a couple years ago and I lost to Melissa and Jack. I didn't lose. I didn't get enough votes, but if you have heard this spiel before, I apologize, but you're going to hear it again. And if you're hearing it for the first time, that's awesome. One of the reasons why I wanted to run for town council this time around is because last time around in this session, as I was going around and getting signatures and meeting my neighbors and other people in the town, there's two common issues that came up and or two common themes. And one was that it didn't matter whether you had been in town for 1 year or 10 years or 50 years or never left. People moved here because of the school district. And that's the same reason that my wife and I moved here with our two kids 4.5 years ago. And that was pretty much universal across the board. The other common theme was that when we talked about downtown, when the subject of downtown came up, it was never about how beautiful downtown is. It was never about how pedestrian friendly downtown is. It's never about how awesome the traffic is downtown. It was always about the congestion of downtown. It was always a negative aspect associated with the downtown discussion. What are your thoughts on congestion? Are you pro-light? Are you anti-light? These are the types of things that came up. And I think that that is a darn shame because this Main Street here is the brand of South Berwick. It's the postcard. That's the quintessential New England small town, and it deserves to be invested in it, and it deserves to be revitalized. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm running. That's why I'm passionate about being a town councilor. I've seen the plans. I've been serving on the planning board for the past close to 3 years now. And so I've seen the investment in long-term planning here in the town, and I'm excited about that opportunity. So I hope that throughout the course of the night, you see how passionate I am about about this downtown project, about making South Berwick a place where people move because they're excited about the town, not just the school district. There we go. Anyway, yeah, so I'm not running because I have any gripes with the town. I'm not running because I have any issues with the town or my property tax bill. I'm running because I'm excited about the opportunity to be a part of the team to finish off the revitalization in downtown, to make it a place where people want to open small businesses and bring their families and have a great quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Clay?
Same.
Same, just introduction questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the skills, background, previous experience and community activities you bring to the town council, and what motivated you to run this year.
Okay, I'm Clay Curtis. I've lived in South Berwick for, about 35 years now. And when I was a teenager, my mom told me 3 things. One of them, you have to have a job. You got to support yourself. One of them was volunteer, help others. And the third was, don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. And I have to admit that right now I'm out of my comfort zone. I haven't run for office before. So, but I do have some experience. In college, I was on the governing committee of a residential arts dorm. In grad school, I was the graduate student representative to the faculty. I did medical research in Boston after university. I trained service monkeys for the quadriplegic veterans. When I moved to this area, I started teaching. I've taught at New Hampshire Tech, then at the shipyard. I became an associate professor at McIntosh College and have also taught at New England College and UNH. I'm an EMT. I was a UNH Marine docent, and I played a lot of music. It's one of the reasons I moved here. I ran a concert series in Portsmouth. I built a small dinghy, and I took classes in violin construction and repair. I served on the finance committee of Dover Friends Meeting that I'm a member of, and I was the treasurer. I was on the board of Dover Cooperative Ministries, which runs the food pantry, the soup kitchen, and Dover Share. My life changed when Sun Microsystems offered me a job as an instructional designer down in Boston. Working for a Fortune 500 company was exciting and lucrative, but it didn't leave much time for anything else. But I did end up on their global business strategy team. After 9/11, Sun folded. And I retired into violin making and restoration full time. I helped write a book on violin maker. I was on the board of directors for the Violin Society of America, and I'm currently on the staff of the violin restoration program at Oberlin. About 8 or 9 years ago, I joined the Pine Tree Search and Rescue and volunteered at York County EMA. During COVID, I worked at the vaccination clinic that they ran and eventually became medical lead. Today, I'm still fixing violins and working with YCEMA. Okay, last year, one last sentence here. Last year, I joined the Community Chorus of South Berwick, which is a wonderful, fantastic organization. I love this town, I love this community, and I hope you will let me serve.
Okay. And as with the previous candidates, we're going to have you answer 4 questions in a row, so you can just stay at the podium and then we'll have Clay do the same. So as our first question, in your view, what are the top 2 issues facing the town right now? And how do you think the council should address them for the well-being of the community?
Thank you. The top 2 issues for me are, this one's near and dear to my heart and probably for everybody else too, is traffic safety. And then the second one is downtown revitalization. And the 2 of them really go hand in hand because I'm a firm believer that if we fix the traffic issues downtown, it alleviates a lot of the issues that we see on the other side streets, Norton, Academy, Liberty. I drive through Agmenticus and Old Mill every morning. And the people that ignore the traffic laws is just crazy. I'm sure everybody here has felt they took their life in their own hands when trying to cross the street downtown or even drive downtown. The downtown revitalization effort is geared towards fixing this, geared towards fixing the traffic issue. That's part of the downtown revitalization. The revitalization plan is ready to be approved and accepted by the council. We got that back from the state. The comp plan is back with some minor revisions that are necessary from the town council. So those are 2 things that are necessary in order for us to progress in these revitalization efforts. The main one that I'm really focused on is the traffic flow and safety. That is the engineering and construction of 2 lights, wider sidewalks, turning lanes, things like that. If people know that they have a predictable and steady option for turning left off of 236 or off of Route 4, I firmly believe that they will not be seeking alternative routes, or it will mitigate the need for them to be speeding down these alternative routes to try to beat the traffic and endanger everybody that lives in those streets. So in terms of what the town council can do to assist with that, really it's the revitalization effort. That's where the focus should be. I believe that will fix the traffic safety issue. Revitalization is something that's near and dear to my heart. Trying to make South Berwick a place where people want to bring their business, where people want to open up a small business that's viable to get in and out, hold parties. A place for families to bring their kids, because you can get across the street and you can walk to the other side of town without fearing for your life and visit any of the multiple parks that we have available for us downtown.
Okay, next question. Town officials and citizens have been focused in recent years on the future of the downtown area, including town hall, the condition of the business block, and traffic safety, among other things. The Downtown Revitalization Advisory Committee has published its draft report after nearly a year of soliciting opinions from residents about attracting and supporting businesses to enhance the community and broaden the local tax base. How do you envision the downtown changing in the future, and what role should the town government play in this?
Thank you. So I sort of touched on this in my last, probably all my topics this whole time. My vision for the downtown is a place where people want to open up small businesses, a place where families can go and visit. They can get in and out easily. They know they're not going to get stuck downtown or stuck in traffic on a Sunday over the summer. That's my vision for the downtown, a place that is pedestrian friendly, a place that people want to come from out of town because they know that they are able to get around, and there's shops here that they want to visit. It is incumbent on business owners downtown to keep and maintain their buildings. I do believe that, but business owners come and go. The local government stays. That's the umbrella. So we're the ones in the local government that need to spearhead that effort, come up with that long-term vision, and make sure that we follow through with revitalizing the town to make it what we want it, and not put that burden totally on the business owners. For the last 10 years, I've been working in construction project management at Pease. I have to spend tax dollars, unfortunately. So I understand ethical decision-making. I understand fiscal responsibility. I understand the role that those have in spending taxpayer dollars. The onus of a small local government is to take care of its town, take care of its citizens, and do it in a fiscally responsible manner. That's my vision for the town council, and my role in the town council is making sure that we're putting dollars in the right place to make maximum impact while mitigating the tax burden to the citizens.
Okay. Next question. Do you see a town council role in addressing the need for workforce and more affordable housing? And if so, what is its role? And how would you balance that with the protection of open space, wetlands, and the town's rural character?
Thank you. The onus is on us to make South Berwick a desirable place for small businesses. And that is something that is done through updating our codes, our plans, our ordinances. Right now, my time on the planning board has been spent looking at business plans, looking at developments across town, and kind of balancing those against the ordinances. And we're restricted by what our ordinances say right now. Unfortunately, they're discombobulated, they're disjointed, they don't really flow together. The town is, Tim Pellerin, the town manager, hired Paul Schumacher for a special projects planner, and also DeCarlo Brown as a town planner here. Those two appointments point to the dedication in the town to focus on long-term planning and focus on development, economic development here in town. So the role of the town council in all of this is thoughtful planning of expansion. And really this comes back to updating our codes, our plans, our ordinances, making sure that we are putting businesses in the right places in town, putting residences in the right places in town, and not overlapping them unnecessarily. In terms of the role for the town council in protecting green spaces. I'm 100% support protecting green spaces, wetlands. That can be done through implementing zoning so that we can increase density downtown in our zoning. It also can mean focusing more on cluster developments from standard developments. So we're reducing the actual footprint of the new developments, also putting limits on vacation rentals when people are installing additional dwelling units, things of that nature.
Thank you. Last question. Given the increasing value of real estate in town due to a booming market and the resulting increase in many people's taxes, should the town council reduce any of its services to less than what they are now, or take any steps to reduce the budget? If so, where and in what way?
So I'll start off by saying that as a town councilor, I will not vote to approve any reduction to our town services, and here's why. I love being in a town that has public service. I love being in a town that has a robust police department, fire department, rec department, public library, dump. I love these services. That's one of the many reasons why I moved here. The fact of the matter is that in order to reduce the mill rate by $1, we would have to eliminate 10% off of the operating budget here in town. The only two departments that are large enough to sustain that or support that is the police department, which has been seeing increase in calls on a nightly basis, and the public works department, which is responsible for our roads, our road maintenance, public spaces, and things like that. I love being in a town that has fire services here. We can't afford to eliminate our police department because we would still have to have cooperative agreements with other towns. I've seen it in Elliott and Kittery. They're constantly calling each other to help support each other because they don't have the resources available to actually respond to all the calls that they get. I don't want to see that here in South Berwick. I love the fact that if I have a medical emergency at my house, I'll have 2 full-time EMTs at my door in 3 to 5 minutes, which is the response time to anywhere in South Berwick. Anywhere in the South Berwick is going to get that same level of support. Those types of services are worth investing in. They're worth spending money on. What I am vehemently opposed to is wasteful spending. You don't reduce and mitigate the costs to our tax bill by eliminating critical services. You do it by eliminating wasteful spending. Traffic study after traffic study after traffic study to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past several decades has cost this town dearly. I've been driving on this road for my entire life. It hasn't changed. It's the same exact thing it was. That type of wasteful spending is what's costing us taxpayers, not these critical services. So no, I won't vote to reduce services. I am allergic to wasteful spending. I won't approve any expenditure of funds without some sort of plan or some alternative to offset the budget through slush funds or grants. I didn't talk about grants. Grants, they're a great thing. Seeking out grants to offset the costs and mitigate the cost to us taxpayers. Thank you.
What? Same set of questions. Oh, sorry. Same set of questions for you. In your view, we'll start with what are the top 2 issues facing the town right now? And how do you think the council should address them for the well-being of the community?
Okay. Well, there are several big issues facing the town right now, especially the town hall renovation and the downtown revitalization initiative. And we face other issues surrounding growth that basically come down to how do we grow? How do we preserve the nature of our town? And how do we maintain affordability? The issues are complex and solutions will inevitably require some compromise. Now, I have one example. It's not a big issue like you were talking about, but on the town website, the Facebook page, there was a talk about a sidewalk, a discussion about a sidewalk. Now, if we want to make a road safe for walking along, a wide shoulder is safer than no shoulder, but not as safe as a curbed sidewalk. But a mile of curbed sidewalk can cost about $500,000 and is often not bicycle or wheelchair friendly. And it requires additional equipment and manpower to plow at additional expense. What trade-offs can we make to increase safety yet be affordable? I don't necessarily agree with that particular outcome, but that is an example of the sort of compromises that sometimes have to be made. As a community, we expect certain facilities and services, but as individuals, we each have different ideas of what is necessary or even desired. Our competing needs have to be evaluated and prioritized, and that's what the town council does. I may look at a decision and disagree with it, but I have to know that my views are being considered and fairly weighed in making that decision. So I think a big issue is communication. And communication goes both ways. There are a lot of opportunities for public comment on issues, and I especially like that in the planning stage of the downtown revitalization, there was a lot of opportunity for public input. So large issues inevitably involve many, many small decisions, any one of which might be a large issue to some people, but a minor detail to others. In order to represent you, town council members need to know your views and your priorities. So communication.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Town officials and citizens have been focused in recent years on future of the downtown area, including the town hall, the condition of the business block, traffic safety, among other things. The Downtown Revitalization Advisory Committee published its draft report after nearly a year soliciting opinions from residents about attracting and supporting businesses to enhance the community and broaden the local tax base. How do you envision the downtown changing in the future, and what role should the town government play in this?
Okay. The Downtown Revitalization Plan seeks to maintain or improve the quality of life in South Berwick. We want to remove the traffic problem that we see every day when the shipyard gets out. We want people, and especially our children, to be able to cross the street safely. We want a safe and vibrant downtown that people come to rather than pass through or avoid. We want to attract good businesses that provide both services and jobs. And ideally, we want the community to be a place where young families want to be and elders can comfortably stay. That's the vision. And the Downtown Revitalization Advisory Committee has, I think, done a very good job getting public input about what people think downtown should be like. And I enjoyed going through the walkthrough. Have you seen the video things online about what it looks like? But, I mean, the state, especially the DOT, has a lot of say in what can be done. Many of the parts of the plan require negotiation and coordination between several agencies. Downtown traffic light, reconfiguring the intersection, that's something that requires coordination between the town, the state, the power companies, and the abutting business owners. Some of the costs will be paid from grants or matching funds, which may come tied to specific requirements or implementations. Each stakeholder has its own priorities, but it's the town council that has the responsibility for coordinating the various parties. And ultimately, the council represents the interests of the townspeople above all else. So yeah, the town council definitely has a role in the revitalization of downtown.
Thank you. Do you see a town council role in addressing the need for a workforce and more affordable housing? And if so, what is its role? And how would you balance that with the protection of open space, wetlands, and the town's rural character?
Okay, we're growing. There's no escaping that. And the question is how to control the growth in a way that maintains the character of the town and the open space. Part of the attraction of South Berwick is our rural nature, our open spaces. We have a state park that's one of the lesser known ones in the state. We have an abundance of preserved natural areas, largely thanks to the land trust. We also have a reputation as a hidden gem for other reasons. We have historic houses. Our history is older than the nation. Our community organizations are active and vibrant and host events that give South Berwick a unique character. Because we're such an attractive community, house prices have risen. And unfortunately, young people who want to stay here often can't afford housing. We need those young people to remain a vibrant community. How do we balance development and affordable housing? Well, we have some affordable housing for the elderly, but not so much for young people. Do we allow more developments? Unfortunately, builders profit more on McMansions than on modest single-family homes. Can we, should we seek to change that? Do we feel like we can sacrifice some woodland for a housing development? Is cluster housing a good compromise? How about the question of preserving local farms? Maybe we should encourage mixed housing that combine businesses and residences, or the ADUs, the accessory dwelling units. They're now legal. Do we want to encourage them? Ultimately, we can address some of these questions with zoning and with permits, but their use depends on exactly how we want the town to development. And also, people want to be free to develop and manage their own property as they see fit. We have to take that into consideration. We want to be sure that it doesn't negatively affect others or the town as we want to see it. Once again, we have a potentially complex situation, and each situation will be different. So yeah, once again, the town definitely has a role in guiding development in a way that protects the nature of the town.
Okay, thank you. And last question, given the increasing value of real estate in town due to a booming market and the resulting increase in many people's taxes, should the town council reduce any of its services to less than what they are now, or take any steps to reduce the budget? If so, where and in what way?
Okay, first, I want to restate the problem. As a community, we expect certain facilities and services. We can, and we do, argue about what things are essential and what things are simply nice to have. But in any case, we have those costs. We also have obligations to the school district and to the county, and we have existing contracts. The council has only a limited power to change some of these, so we have costs. Therefore, we need funding. Property taxes are one funding source. I'm a senior citizen. I have a limited income. I don't like that my property tax has gone up. We want people to afford to live here. We want elders to be able to stay, and we want to attract and keep younger people in the community. So yeah, I'd like to minimize the property tax burden. And some ways perhaps, okay, some people want to do this by just cutting items from the budget, but to cut enough significantly affect an individual tax bill, we would have to drastically reduce services that the community expects. And also, deferred maintenance is a false economy. I live in a 150-year-old house. I know that doing repairs on the cheap may save money now, but cost significantly more later. But cutting spending is only one way of keeping taxes low. There are other sources of funding. You referred to that. The town is already actively applying for grants and matching funds. Some projects are as much as 50% funded by outside dollars. Development could broaden the tax base. Controlled growth programs like the tax increment funding agreements keep more money in the community if they're used intelligently. We could also seek to implement more tax relief programs. The Senior Property Tax Stabilization Program was an experiment that unfortunately the state had to discontinue, but it's an example of the sort of program that might lessen the property tax burden. We need to spend wisely and responsibly. And I think even more, we need to seek more outside funding sources. It is a hard problem. It's a convoluted problem, and I don't think there are very easy answers.
Thanks. All right, that is our two candidates for school board, I'm sorry. Two candidates for town council, it's getting late. Let's have Bill up and for a couple minutes of closing comments, and then we'll have ladies.
I told you in my opening comments why I'm excited to run for town council. I hope that all my answers throughout the night kind of echoed that sentiment, that I'm excited for what the opportunity is here before us. I'm not daunted by the problems that this town has faced in the past. I'm not daunted by the ones we have now or the ones we're going to face in the future. I'm excited for the opportunity. I'm excited for the possibilities that we have to affect some real change here in town and really make it something that's a great place for businesses, small families, big families, doesn't matter. People, I want it to be somewhere that people want to be. I'm excited for that opportunity to be a part of the team as your town councilor, to finish off this revitalization effort downtown, to finish off the comp plan, to get those over the finish line so that we can go out and get these grants from the state to offset the costs for these revitalization efforts. That's what I'm excited about. That's why I'm excited to be a town councilor, and I hope you'll consider voting for me. Thank you.
I believe in community. I believe in this community. South Berwick is a place people want to come to and want to live in. And community means working together. We may have different views and priorities, but I think we have one shared goal. We want this to remain a wonderful place to live. I also believe in representative government. That means that although I have my views, I will listen to yours. And if appropriate, I'll put aside my views if it will better serve the community. We're a team. Sometimes that means compromise. The issues are complex. There are no simple solutions. And at every step, things need to be evaluated, discussed, and prioritized in order to make a decision. And that complicated process needs to be communicated clearly. But it goes the other way too. I need you to tell me, or whoever is elected, your views. Only then does representative government work. I believe that I can productively serve as a member of the Town Council of South Berwick, and I hope you give me a chance.
Thank you, and as a reminder, this is Bill Cole and Clay Curtis, and let's give them a round of applause. All right, and last we have our candidates for school board. Erin Capel is challenging incumbent Lisa Flynn for a South Berwick seat. Thank you. So again, we'll have you come up and each do an introduction, and then we'll go through our questions, and then we'll have you each do closing remarks. So we'll start with Erin.
Good evening.
So please tell us briefly about yourself. What issues motivated you to run for the school board this year?
Thanks to the South Berwick Reporter for hosting this event, and to everybody who took the time to attend in person or online. My name is Erin Capel, and I'm running for school board. I graduated from Marshwood High School 20 years ago and got a great education. Several years later, I met a girl from Wells, and together we moved to Seattle to start our careers in physical therapy and facilities management. We got married, had 2 kids, and after 8 years out west, moved back to Maine to be near family again. We found a great house in South Berwick and are so grateful to be here. Our firstborn son turned 4 this year, and when we started looking at pre-K for this fall, we were shocked to see how far Maine had fallen since our time in the public schools. According to the Department of Education's National Assessment for Educational Progress, often referred to as the nation's report card, 20 years ago, Maine was hovering around number 10 in the country. Now, according to the same source, we're hovering around 36th. An independent ranking by US News put Maine dead last at 51st in the nation. Enrollment is still down from pre-pandemic levels, and yet our spending has increased $5.5 million since the 2021 fiscal year budget. I met a young couple whose kids are in the system, and unfortunately, they may have to move out of South Berwick because they don't know how they're going to afford the recent property tax increase. That isn't right. Even if we were the #1 district in the #1 state, that story would be tragic. But in a reality where almost every metric is trending downward, how can we justify this? I'm running first and foremost to give our kids the same great education I got, if not better. I'm also running to give back to the community where I grew up. And after hearing some of the pain points of many South Berwick residents, I'm running to ensure that no one is priced out of their home due to ever increasing property taxes.
Thank you, Lisa. Same question for you. Tell us about yourself briefly and what you consider the top accomplishments of the board during your last term and what motivated you to run again this year.
Thank you. I'm Lisa Flynn. I am the incumbent. I've been on the school board for 6 years now, which is incredible. I also graduated from Marshwood High School. I've been here most of my life, outside of about 10 years in early adulthood. I come from a long line of community servants. Actually, my grandfather was on the school board at one time. He also served as the school's district's facility director and also volunteer police chief for the town of South Berwick. So it's a little bit in my DNA. I founded, served as the CEO for, and have sold 2 businesses, actually with a complete focus on educational consulting with a mission to improve the lives and well-beings of children. I have extensive experience in everything it takes to run a business: operations, financial strategies, communication, contracting, negotiations. I also have quite a bit of experience in youth mental health, wellness, curriculum development, and yes, social emotional learning, which is not a bad word. We've always had social emotional learning. We just have a term for it now. Finally, I am a part-time faculty member of the UNH Professional Development and Training program where I teach teachers. Having said that, 6 years is not enough. The first 3 years, board members, myself included, have a lot to learn, so they watch and listen a lot. The second 3 years, the fruits of the labor of the previous term start to come clear, and one begins to gain confidence and understand the intricate policies, laws, processes, budgeting, negotiations, etc., that can start to become much more involved. I honestly feel like I've just gotten started. I said this last time, and I wish to continue the tremendous work and accomplishments of the board and district these last 3 to 6 years. There's a lot to list here. One of, so I just want to touch on just a few. Transparency has been and continues to be a top priority for the district, as well as for me personally. Many of my efforts personally, leading committees, including getting the website up and running, the school board processes more open and available to people, have been one of those. Academics as well. The US World and News Report had 2-year-old information. It was incomplete data that they were looking at, so it was really an unfair comparison. I have all of this information on my website, on Facebook. If you don't have access to Facebook, please go ahead and contact me, lisa.flynn@rsu35.org. Thank you.
Okay, Erin, so we're gonna go through 4 questions for you, and then we'll ask the same question for Lisa. To start, what do you consider the most important roles of school board members? What do you see as the school district's strengths, and where would you like to see improvements?
Thanks. I'll answer the second question first. This district still seems to have a stellar reputation for its schools, despite the decline Maine has seen in recent decades. The teachers, administrators, and school board members clearly care about the well-being of their students, as do even the most critical voices in town. It feels like everyone wants what's best for our kids, even if we may disagree on how to achieve the best results. To the first question, a school board should operate much like the board of directors at a company, where the superintendent is the CEO. The board and the CEO work together toward a common goal to produce the best outcomes while being fiscally responsible. They have a responsibility to their employees, or in this analogy, the teachers, who are the engine that drives the organization. And above all, they have a duty to the students to make sure that they're getting the best service and experience. While the CEO is the person most responsible for the success or failure of the organization, a strong board should be a cross-functional, open-minded group of decision makers with a diversity of perspectives and expertise. They have responsibility of being well-informed and to guide the CEO in the right direction if they feel he's off the mark. In my professional career, I've operated several million square feet of Class A corporate office space with the smallest team possible. This included a building where a very high-profile tech CEO sat. So because of this, my visibility, transparency, high pressure, efficiency, identifying waste, and budgeting are second nature to me. In that role, I learned a leadership principle called disagree and commit, which kind of sounds like stick to your guns, but that's not what it means. Disagree and commit means that in service of accomplishing a goal, you have to have discourse, express opinions, explore every option, and simultaneously consider and poke holes in every argument. After every consideration is covered and a decision is made, everyone must commit to it, even if they disagree. A successful organization can't thrive if there are leaders undermining the mission because they disagree. I look forward to having good faith conversations with not just the school board members and the superintendent, but students, teachers, and the public as well. I believe we all have the best intentions and can find the best solutions if we're willing to be truly open-minded and respectful.
Next question. The school district budget represents 55.2% of the property tax bill homeowners pay this year, compared to 42.3% town and 2.5% county. Residents have complained that the school spending has increased more rapidly than their incomes, particularly older people on fixed incomes. Do you think there are areas of the school budget that could be trimmed? And if so, please specify those items.
As I mentioned in my opening statement, I spoke to a husband and wife who may have to move out of South Berwick due to the recent property tax hike. This problem isn't exclusive to our district, so I'm not going to pretend we're unique. Although I did notice there's nothing about fiscal responsibility in the mission statement for the school board. My wife had a patient recently whose mortgage has been paid off for several years, but because his property taxes have gone up and up and up, he's at a breaking point due to being a veteran on a fixed income and may not be able to stay in the house he bought in the 1980s. These stories break my heart, and unfortunately, the problem can't be solved completely at the local level. So it's up to all of us to push back on political leaders who spend our tax dollars frivolously. I'm aware that school boards across the state are largely at the mercy of the Department of Education and legislators, and that it's up to the school boards to then implement policies and allocate money accordingly. But if we don't push back and we keep investing in things that aren't working, we're going to continue getting more and more bad results. That said, I've read through this year's budget line by line, all 243 pages. I do this for a living, and it was difficult for even me to understand what some of this meant. I wish I could point to the item that said slush fund, 10 million bucks, but it's not in there. I did find several items that are pretty vague, and maybe they're needed, but I have a hard time believing there's no fluff in a budget that contributed to my taxes going up 14%. Special Services Administration, $678,000. Special Services Other, $1.2 million. System Administration, $765,000. Business Manager, $400,000. Again, maybe these are all crucial, but those are some of the expenditures that raised my eyebrow. It's normal to pad a budget, but if every budget is approved without resistance, why wouldn't you continue asking for more? But now we're at a tipping point, and the least we can do is ask pointed questions about if and why we need everything that is being paid for with your money. Right now, I'm just a concerned father, resident, and taxpayer, but if elected to school board, I'll be a champion not only for the students and teachers, but also the taxpayers.
Next question. School districts throughout Maine are debating whether students should be allowed to have cell phones in the classroom, and several districts now ban them during the school day. Teachers say students are more engaged in the class without access to their phones. At the same time, many parents are concerned about not having access to their children during the day. What limits, if anything, if any, do you think schools should put on phones from elementary school up through high school?
Yeah. I deleted my social media accounts over 5 years ago, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made for my mental health, although I did reluctantly create a campaign Facebook page. So, as fully formed adults, many of us are still vulnerable to propaganda, confirmation bias, which is seeking information that confirms your own beliefs, echo chambers, which are spaces where you only encounter your own beliefs, negative emotions due to the words of anonymous trolls, exposure to every tragedy happening in the world on a daily basis, graphic violence, and horrific news stories. The list of negative consequences associated with being too online are seemingly endless. So how do we expect our kids to handle those consequences? My wife and I had some friends over on Saturday, one of whom is an executive director at a charter school in Boston who recently banned phones. She said that while there were challenges at first, the benefits far outweighed the challenges. She informed us that the average team receives 237 notifications per day, a quarter of them coming in during the school day, and the time that it takes for a student to re-engage after each notification is significant. At a time when kids' mental health issues are at an all-time high, simply banning phones during the day probably doesn't go far enough. Schools can't do it alone, though. I encourage every parent to read The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, the subtitle of which is How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. I predict we'll look back at this time in history with shame because we didn't do enough to protect our kids' developing minds from the poisonous effects of social media. The next question is about bullying, and I have a lot to say about that, but these two topics are linked. When I was bullied as a kid, I at least got relief when I got home. Now, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram are the world our kids live in, so the bullying they experience at school follows them home. It's endless. It's no wonder the kids' mental health issues have skyrocketed since the advent of the smartphone. Regarding parents' ability to communicate with their kids, parents have always been able to call the school if they urgently need to contact their kids. So that argument doesn't persuade me personally. My goal of getting back to basics would absolutely include restricting cell phone usage during the day at school.
Okay, thanks. Next question. Bullying is a persistent problem in local schools and children are targeted for all sorts of reasons. What role do you feel schools should play in teaching such issues as tolerance, civility, self-esteem? Please be specific in terms of your opinion of mental health programs, diversity efforts, and support of a school community where every child feels safe.
So I was bullied pretty severely as a young child, so I know firsthand how painful it can be. And I wish no child ever had to feel that kind of pain, but wishful thinking doesn't get us anywhere. So what practical steps can we take to address bullying? Despite good intentions, many solutions put in place are having the opposite of their intended effect. Kids are more depressed, more anxious, and those feelings become pathologized and diagnosed, putting them on a lifelong conveyor belt of therapy and pharmaceuticals. They didn't just have a bad experience, they endured trauma. They aren't overthinking a negative event, they have PTSD. They're not sad, they have depression. They're not worried or nervous, they have anxiety. This is a cash grab from enormous industries and actually diminishes the seriousness of these afflictions that people truly have. Getting the outcomes we want for our kids means orienting incentives in a way that makes sense. And the bullying problem starts at home. Again, first piece is getting kids off social media, but we also must lead by example. Have you seen some of the comments on the South Berwick Bulletin Facebook page? Bullying seen at school needs to be addressed immediately, and the bully needs to face real consequences. New theories of discipline called restorative practices and social emotional learning sound really nice, but in practice, they're disturbing. They tell kids to obsess over the worst things that have ever happened to them. There's a practice called the magic circle, where to start and end the day, students sit in a circle and are asked a question like, what's something that really bothers you? The teacher throws out a ball, whoever catches it answers, passes to the next kid, and so on. One teacher testimonial says, quote, "The classroom becomes almost like this group counseling session, but this really amateur one where it's just me, a public school teacher who has no training on how to do it. And kids are there talking about their abusive stepdad who drinks too much, and then other guys try to one-up them with their story about this or that. That was what we were encouraged to do. The idea was just if they had a chance to express themselves, that then they would behave better. I don't know, I didn't see it working very much. I wanted to get to know them. I wanted to support them and help them. But this was actually taking that instinct a lot of teachers have and channeling it into this creepy program. I actually think that sometimes it did more harm than good for the kids themselves," end quote. Back to basics. Lack of discipline and accountability for the sake of restorative justice doesn't do anyone good, and the evidence is clear. Let's stop telling our kids how fragile they are or that they're victims, and instead teach them to be resilient in the face of adversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Now, Lisa will ask you the same set of questions, starting with the first question, which is, what do you consider the most important role of school board members, and what do you see as the school district's strengths and where you would like to see improvements?
So the role of the school board is very, very clear. It is to hire and oversee and support the superintendent, to develop and adopt policies, keeping up with the laws of the state, to approve and the allocation of a fiscally responsible budget in order to forward the mission of the school district. We do not have fiscal responsibility in the mission. The mission is designed to support kids. It's the board's responsibility to ensure a fiscally responsible budget. As well, we contribute to developing and ensuring the execution of the strategic plan. The biggest strength of our district right now, actually, is our academics. Just a few notes. RSU 35 middle and high school students consistently outperform their peers around the state by significant margins in math, science, and ELA, upwards of 25% in some cases. Scores appear to be on the uptick overall, indicating that things are correcting academically post-COVID. These scores are not the only thing we value, though. We value relationships and rich experiences that build character and connections in addition to academic success. These scores are much more accurate representation of where we are academically than outdated third-party rankings such as the US News and World Report that uses old, incomplete data. In terms of, there's another part to the question. The strengths?
Strengths and where would you like to see?
Yes, okay, just wanted to make sure that wasn't a separate question. Really, there are lots of areas to improve as always, as we're always learning. I would love to see increasing engagement of our students, making school more interesting. So how do we do that? We need to give them more innovative opportunities for learning that maybe fall outside of the normal classroom experience. We've started to do that with our extended learning program, our ELO learning program. SRTC, the Sanford Regional Technical Institute. We even have students, up to 30% of our students earning college credit, up to 7 college credits before they even graduate high school. All of our PE teachers are now certified in adaptive PE. I would like to see some continued focus on academics and our school counseling program as well, helping our students, especially at the high school level, to be a little bit more prepared for the options that they have post-college and beyond. Ultimately, also, we have an alumni association in the works. And the idea of that, to Mark's question to me earlier a couple of weeks ago, is that we will be hopefully being able to track what happens to kids when they leave high school in terms of their career paths, what schools they've gone to, and where they are 5 and 10 years down the road. Thank you.
Oh, right, you get lots.
Okay.
Okay, next question. The school district budget represents 55.2% of the property tax bill homeowners pay this year,
Yes.
compared to 42.3% town, 2.5% county. Residents have complained that the school spending has increased more rapidly than their incomes, particularly older people on fixed incomes. Do you think there are areas of the school budget that could be trimmed? And if so, please specify the lens.
This is such a tough question. There's no doubt that the school budget has increased, as has inflation, as have the numerous out of our control situations coming down from the state that we need to address. So the increase in taxes in South Berwick this year was significant. I felt that as well. I live here too. But the district's overall budget increase was 5.55%. The increase in assessment that we asked from the local communities was less, an average of 5.49. However, the change in the mill rate and the state subsidy formula, which is outside of our control, resulted in an even larger increase, 6.60% in the district's assessment of taxes to South Berwick. However, this increase was to the school portion of the budget only, not the overall town budget. Factors at the town level, also outside of the district's control, resulted in the larger property tax increases for the individual taxpayers of South Berwick. In summary, I'm very proud to serve along Superintendent John Caverly and our brilliant financial manager, Ryan Cormier. Their creative thinking combined with the school board's deep understanding of the district's needs has helped us find lots of cost-saving measures. Please go to Lisa for RSU 35 on Facebook. You can download all of this information yourself with actual real details and data. We need to do that without compromising the quality of education, however. It's through their leadership and the board's commitment that we've managed to keep tax obligations as low as possible, despite the many challenges we face today, both in schools and elsewhere. So yes, I am committed. If I'm reelected, I will remain fully dedicated to finding solutions that support both our students and our community, ensuring that we continue to provide excellent education for our children in our district, while also being very mindful, as always, of our financial responsibilities.
Thank you. Next question. School districts throughout Maine are debating whether students should be allowed to have cell phones in the classroom, and several districts now ban them during the school day. Teachers say students are more engaged in class without access to their phones, but many parents are concerned about not having access to their children during the day. What limits, if any, do you think schools should put on phones from elementary school up through high school?
So basically ditto to everything Mr. Capel said, 1,000 times over, 100%. That is my personal opinion. But I can tell you what we're actually doing. The research is in, clearly showing that cell phones in classrooms cause distraction and impairs learning and meaningful engagement and connection building, which is an important part of social, emotional, cognitive, and academic development. A recent study showed 80% of teachers feel cell phones in the classroom cause distraction and disengagement. Additionally, mental health consequences have been directly correlated with the overuse of cell phones, including addictive behavior, stress and anxiety, disconnection, depression, and so it goes. We are a learning institution. It is our responsibility to ensure academic as well as social and emotional learning can take place with as little distraction as possible. Therefore, we have policies limiting the use of cell phones at school. They're allowed in school. In middle school, they're left in backpacks, secured in lockers. At the high school, students leave their phones at the classroom door, if not in their lockers. We really just started putting our foot down on this year. Post-COVID, we're a little loosey-goosey, and now we're no longer, and guess what? The results have been absolutely phenomenal by all accounts, teachers and students alike. Sticking to this policy, particularly starting at the beginning of the school year, it's already having a tremendously positive effect. Students and teachers are much more engaged with each other, talking and connecting students with each other, and more laughter, lightness, and a general sense of well-being. This is coming out of students' mouths. I think that's pretty powerful, considering the addiction that most of our students have to their phones. While there are always exceptions though, right? There's always going to be an exception, certain students needing to have a phone on them at all of times, which I am fully in support of. But I am looking forward to continuing this policy, and looking back, frankly, I regret that it had not been encouraged more when my two kids were at Marshwood.
Okay, and then last question for you. Bullying is a persistent problem in local schools, and children are targeted for all sorts of reasons. What role do you feel the school should play in teaching such issues as tolerance, civility, and self-esteem? Please be specific in terms of your opinions of mental health programs, diversity efforts, and support of a school community where every child feels safe.
So our mission statement of Marshwood School District is to provide a place where students, parents, staff, and community members work together to foster a lifelong passion for learning and engage all students in developing the skills and knowledge they need to be successful, live healthy lives, and become ethical, kind, compassionate, responsible citizens who thrive in an ever-changing world. What that means is we need to be teaching and supporting parents and community members in having kids learn what it is to be civil. We also need to be modeling that, and that's not always happening across this country these days, never mind in our own community, unfortunately. So modeling this at home, modeling this in our schools is super duper important. Bullying will happen. It does happen. It happens everywhere. It happened when I was a kid. It happened when Aaron was a kid. There's going to be bullying. However, I disagree with Mr. Capel in how bullying should be handled. We absolutely have bullying policies. We have bullying procedures. We have forms to fill out for incidents of bullying. There are procedures to follow when these things happen. You don't always hear about them because of FERPA laws. There is something going on when bullying is reported. There is a process happening to address those things. Please, again, I'm going to be posting about this tomorrow. Check out my page, Lisa for RSU 35 on Facebook. You can also email me, and I'm happy to give you direct links to all of this information. Restorative practices are huge. Restorative practices is not as loosey-goosey as Mr. Capel made it out to sound. The point of restorative practices is that when children make a mistake, whether it be bullying or otherwise, to give them an opportunity to make amends, to make a correction, and learn something so that it doesn't happen again. Punitive discipline doesn't do that. It makes people sneak around, and it doesn't really teach anything. So restorative, it's a soft word, but please understand it doesn't mean students get off the hook. What it means is that we're looking for ways that instead of shaming students, for example, for skipping school, right, or doing these things, we want them to instead know that they're wanted, they're valued, their voices are heard. And we all know that children need to be seen, heard, and feel safe wherever they are. And that is part of this as well. So imagine a bully situation where you have a student being bullied and a student doing the bullying and having an opportunity to get together, talk it out. Who knows? Maybe there's even a friendship that comes out of that, but the learning is there, and it's something that they'll take with them the rest of their life. Those are the opportunities that I stand for. Thank you.
What are you doing?
Thanks for sticking it out. We're all tired, including the laptop. I was enrolled to go to college in 2004, but I deferred when the band I was in started to gain traction. I ended up spending 10 years touring the country as a professional drummer before hanging up my sticks in late 2014 and entering the corporate world. I was able to get an entry-level job and worked my way up very quickly, largely thanks to the great high school education I received at Marshwood. Not everyone will go to college, and I'm proof that a strong public education can set kids on a path to success. My kids are just entering the system, and I want the same great opportunity for all of our kids. I hope to bring my unique set of skills to school board and look forward to collaborating with everyone. I'm a fast learner, and while I'm not a confrontational person, I will bring constructive criticism and expertise to the budget and how we approach discipline in our schools. I want to close with my concern for teachers. I'll be citing data on this and other topics I spoke about tonight on my campaign Facebook page. But anecdotally, I've counted at least 9 teachers in my life who have left the profession altogether, stating the main reasons were due to pay, student behavioral issues, excessive paperwork, and feeling hindered by administrators and regulations. Paying teachers and supporting them so they can do their job effectively is the highest priority in my opinion. If together we can recognize that some of the current programs aren't working and that much of the money we're spending isn't helping, we can change course. If not, we're going to get more of the same. If anything I've said tonight resonates with you, I ask you to vote Aaron Capel for school board. Thank you.
Several years ago, I ran for the school board, and the very night after the election, I wrote the following. A few reflections as I doze off exhausted, but content. 1, though not necessarily a close race, 474 of our community members wanted something different for our schools, and there's a lot that I will learn from that. Certainly, I look forward to being more clear in addressing the present concerns in the coming months, which I did. Going forward, my hope is that community members will be much more willing to reach out with questions. We don't know the answer to something we need to ask. When you need clarification about what's actually happening, when you need a breakdown of particular areas of the budget, the information is available to you. Also, try not to make assumptions, right? Like really dig in and get the research and the data. Try to get the facts from the source so that what we are saying on social media and elsewhere is accurate. And please consider that everyone is doing their best. School board is a volunteer position. Volunteer. I'm not going to describe to you the number of hours that goes into all of this, but I am unbelievably privileged and honored to be able to do it. We have a phenomenal community of passion and involved, but none of us. Are we muted? What just happened? Somebody's saying we're muted. That can't be right. Sorry, over there on Zoom.
See if I can.
I'm not sure. Someone just said we're muted.
Doesn't.
No. Okay, maybe for some reason he wasn't muted. As always, I welcome parent voice and community input. I'm proud to have been part of the planning, creating improved opportunities for communication. I'm going to plan to do that. Increase transparency and availability of information, which will be expanding even more so. Again, we have a phenomenal community of passion-involved citizens, but nobody's flawless, nor are our schools, by the way. There's always so much to learn and other viewpoints to consider, and those differing opinions are essential for growth. Having said that, we must stay responsible, open, and respectful so that we can actually listen and share productively. That includes at town council and planning board meetings, school board meetings, and well, if your family is anything like mine, also around the dinner table. When we can do that, collaboration and forward movement is possible. I would very much appreciate the opportunity to learn and grow alongside the school community, to continue to do that with the input and support of our greater community residents, parents, grandparents, business owners, and other public servants. Thank you so much for considering me to continue the good work that we've started so that we can go even further as a school district, supporting our kids for the long term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. And that, concludes our candidate tonight. Thanks to everyone here and, South Road Reporter for sponsoring this event, and for all of you who stayed till 9:30. Very, very impressive. Thank you all.
Oh, no, not at all.